Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, theories, and more.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's Summer Court episode, where we're covering chapters 32 through 37 of A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. But before we head to the beach, please listen closely to our content warning. While we're focusing our discussion on chapters 32 through 37 and Book 2, we are going to bring in themes, foreshadowing, lore, and other insights across the ACOTAR series. So yes, that means these episodes are spoiler central for all of the ACOTAR books. These ACOMAF deep dives do not, however, include spoilers for the rest of Sarah J. Maas's series, except at the end of every episode where we include our Maasverse Madness segment. We'll give a big old spoiler warning beforehand, so if you haven't read the Maasverse, you can leave the episode right there, no worries at all, or you can keep listening for Throne of Glass and/or Crescent City crossover callouts.
So with all of that said, if you don't know why it would be easy to fall in love with Tarquin, then please go finish the books. We will be here when you're done.
Next, we at Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
It is jealousy central for our two lovebirds here, but the real love story begins this episode with Amren and Varian. And yes, I will be discussing how I believe Varian is a freak in the sheets. So please be mindful of little listening ears.
And as we head into this real life summer, we're so excited to be podcast partners at several live events.
We will be at LeakyCon in Portland, Oregon this July 5th through 7th. Get your tickets for 10% off in the link in the show notes.
And we'll be at the Dragon Gauntlet event in Boyne City, Michigan this August 16th and 17th. We're hosting a live show at both events and participating in tons of other activities and sessions. Links to LeakyCon and Dragon Gauntlet are in the show notes.
And if you're a Patreon member of ours, we have extra special discount codes for you. So head over to your Patreon portal for more details.
Speaking of, if you love Fantasy Fangirls and this ACOMAF journey we're on together, if you want more content, more community, more events, and so much more, please do check out our Patreon.
We have 2 membership tiers that you can join. The Valkyries, which includes access to our Boppin' Discord, live Q&As from Lexi and I, community events, a book club, plus a 20% off discounted and exclusive merch store, all for $5 a month. Or you can join the High Fae, which includes everything from the Valkyrie level, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines. We just released one that was 76 pages long for one episode. You get that in the High Fae, and you also get special voting privileges. That is all for $10 a month.
Join the Patreon party at patreon.com/fantasyfangirls, or the link is also in the show notes or YouTube caption. And really and truly, thank you so much for supporting us as we've turned this dream into our livelihood. It means the absolute world, and we really appreciate you so much.
And now it is time to steal a book. Dun, dun, dun.
Nicole's going to open this discussion with a summary of what happens in chapters 32 through 37. So gather round, friends. We need a summer court version of the Inner Circle Debrief.
Chapter 32, Summer Vacation, here we come! Rhysand, Amren, and Feyre all winnow to the summer court, where we meet its High Lord and goodest golden retriever boy, Tarquin, plus his cousins Cressida and Varian. Over a meal in one of the many summer court dining rooms, Tarquin admits that should another war come along, they would fight against Hybern, but only against Hybern, because there's this little possibility of southern neighbor Tamlin going to war over Feyre. Cressida and Varian tell her that the law requires them to return the High Lord's stolen bride, but puppy dog Tarquin reminds his cousins that they would be Alaskan bullworm meat if it weren't for Feyre. And to drive the point home, Rhysand then threatens that if anyone sends word to Tamlin, they will find themselves deader than dead. Curse breaker and tension breaker Feyre offers up a hilarious joke, and the atmosphere eases. Chapter 33. Later in Feyre's bedroom, Rhys tells her that he enjoys Tarquin and his team, and he would prefer to not make enemies out of them. Well, Feyre, still uneasy about the possibility of Tamlin going to war for her, admits that she would go back to the spring court to avoid distress, and Rhys is like, yeah, that ain't happening. Conversation moves to a game of chicken. Feyre asks Rhysand if he would mind if she fucked Tarquin for the Book of Breathings. Spoiler alert, he minds. These two, less than a breath away from each other, take this sexual tension through the roof. But Feyre sends some water droplets towards Rhysand's face. That'll calm my pulse down. That night, in celebration of their visitors, Tarquin hosts a dinner on his yacht. Outdoor dining room, anyone? Feyre looks into the city to try to feel a tug towards the book anywhere, and she's got Nothing. Her and Tarquin discuss the similarities between fairy and human realms, specifically over their class systems, and admits that he would very much like to see a world where lesser fairies do not carry that title and they have just as much sway as the high fae. Recognizing Tarquin's immense kindness, Feyre tells him that she could easily fall in love with him and it would be even easier to call him her friend. Feyre looks over to see Rhysand and Cressida basically eye fuck each other, and realizing she's lonely and unhappy and uber jealous, she heads off to the secluded part of the pleasure yacht, not feeling very pleasurable right now though, and over an hour later they park the boat, but Rhysand and Cressida are nowhere to be seen. They're obviously bumping uglies. Chapter 34. The next morning, pissy and jealous, Feyre skips breakfast and instead takes a bath and practices her water bending, making little water animals. This would entertain me for hours. Around noon, looking like a summer tall glass of water, Feyre walks right past Rhysand towards Tarquin. He takes her on a tour of the Summer Court Museum, even giving her a family heirloom, which is basically the heart of the ocean from Titanic-sized rock. All the while, Feyre searches for anything that would feel like a tug towards the book, and she's got nothing. Museum time over and she's skipping the gift shop. Feyre heads straight to her room where she finds Rhysand waiting on her bed. And the lack of control I would have in this moment is astonishing. She shows Rhysand her new bling and tells him that goodest boy Tarquin wants to be allies, so maybe we should just ask him for the book. But when Rhys tells her that Cressida thinks rather differently to Tarquin's intentions, instead admitting that he's rather ambitious, Feyre makes a jealous dig. Rhys admits that he did not bang bang bangity bang with Cressida, and in fact he was jealous of Tarquin, that Tarquin would be someone who is easy to fall in love with and never live a life consistently under threat. Feyre, seeing this vulnerability, pours him a shot, and they clink glasses to the stars who listen and the dreams that are answered. Cue weeping. Chapter 35. Feyre continues the several days of unsuccessful book tracking, but fried fish eating, that is a success. However, one day Feyre notices a half-submerged temple covered in seaweeds and immediately feels a tug. Wanting to be sure though, she takes that night in the family dining room to suggest walking with Tarquin to this little building. But the summer court suddenly internally starts singing, "Don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious," and they utterly fail. Feyre basically paddleboards into Tarquin's mind and soothes away any alarm. Later, Feyre freaks out to Rhys about the violation in his mind, but Rhys assures her that this far outweigh the costs. That's the morally gray motto. Chapter 36. Time for a heist! My favorite part of any summer vacation. Rhys flies Feyre and Amren close to the entrance at low tide and then promptly takes to the skies to play whack-a-mole with the guards. Feyre and Amren infiltrate the sea-smelly temple where they have to dig it out or dig it, and Feyre shifts into Tarquin to unlock a door. She and Amren then find a lead box containing an unhinged voice, Feyre attempting to soothe the book, but this cunning little box outsmarts Feyre, screaming, "Liar!" and the doors slam shut. Chapter 37. Good news and bad news. Good news, Amren can use her powers to blast open doors. Take that, you box. Bad news, Amren and Feyre attempt to make their way to the surface, but the water is too powerful, and it's looking like the end of Amren and Feyre. But remember those water wraiths that everyone in the spring court was all judgy at Feyre for helping? Well, the sister water wraiths grab hold of Amren and Feyre and swim them to the surface as a payment to their sister's debt. Rhys finds a drenched and almost drowned Feyre and Amren and tells him that his game of whack-a-mole with the guards got a little out of hand, and it looks like he only got 90% because some of those guards are now announcing the infiltration. So Rhys winnows them all back to the townhouse. Worst vacation ever.
One of the weirdest things about being on vacation is sleeping in another bed. I mean, did you know that traditional bed sheets can harbor more bacteria than that temple? It can lead to acne, allergies, and stuffy noses, and that's just gross. Well, Miracle Made offers a whole line of self-cleaning antibacterial bedding such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth and require up to 3 times less laundry. Huzzah!
Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermal regulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, so you get better sleep every single night. I love how high-end the Miracle Made sheets feel. Like, I feel like I'm sleeping in the summer court over here. It feels so good. When I'm hopping into bed, I literally feel like I'm staying at a 5-star summer court hotel, except I can't order room service. But I do think Brett would bring me food if I asked.
He totally would, sweet Brett. Go to trymiracle.com/FF to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our code FF at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an additional 20%.
Miracle is so confident in their product that it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you will get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep to Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/FF and use code FF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that is trymiracle.com/FF to treat yourself. Thank you so much, Miracle Maid, for sponsoring this episode.
All right, it is time to step into the cauldron and discuss key insights, character analysis, foreshadowing, theories, and so much more. Summer Court, here we are. Rhys winnows himself, Feyre, and Amren directly into Adriata, where they intend to stay for however long it takes for Feyre to detect and steal the first half of the Book of Breathings. And I want to immediately draw attention to the language that Feyre uses regarding her role in this mission. She refers to herself as, quote, Rhys's newest pet, and how his, quote, lapdog is actually a bloodhound. What's the difference in being Rhys's pet, first when she was considered Tamlin's pet and absolutely miserable, resistant to what she was supposed to do? Well, there's a lot of reasons that we've highlighted extensively on the podcast. Specifically in this instance, she is in on the political game this time. She believes in this mission and she is actively part of helping Prythian. If they reunite the two halves of the book, she can nullify the cauldron and stop the King of Hybern from raging war on civilization. In the Spring Court, however, her purpose was passive. She was supposed to do nothing except to sit pretty and be the High Lord's lady as part of the propaganda that peace has settled upon the land again. Tamlin literally had her on a leash and yanked her back from doing anything she wanted to do, even when it was to proactively help. Now she is putting on a mask and playing the political game, using her abilities, both her cunning and actual powers, to work toward the greater goal. She's not actually Rhys's pet here, and she knows it. She's owning her role in this.
It's time for a quick wing watch. The most on-brand wing watch I think we've ever had. Rhys being the cool, cultured male, aka he's donning his favorite mask when he goes here to the Summer Court. He has no wings out and he's wearing his favorite black ensemble. While we're on clothes though, Feyre is wearing a lilac dress that she selected. That is really important here. Recall in episode 1 of our ACOMAF coverage, we talked about Feyre not having any animosity over her clothes. Not only is Feyre choosing her own clothes here, but she's also choosing something feminine again. She hasn't wanted to feel like these things in a long time. In the Spring Court, the feminine gowns were a statement that were out of her control. Here she is choosing the narrative, like Lexi was saying, and going along with her disguise for the Summer Court, and she's owning her own role here. Now, the second time that Feyre is feeling herself in an outfit, she's also curious as to why Rhys doesn't note her clothes either time. She's like, I look hot. Like, what's up, dude? And I do wonder if that's because she's so used to Tamlin/Ianthe sharing their opinions on her wardrobe or speaking out about it, because she even says how Moore doesn't say anything about her outfit or maybe it was 2 episodes ago. But I also do wonder if she's like, bitch, I look good. Why are you not saying it? Now, today's Suriel section is going to be all about the Summer Court. But just to set the scene, here's what our crew winnows into. They're looking at a tan stone palace on top of a hill overlooking a sparkling sea. This is my heaven. This sounds amazing, at least for me, because Feyre's survival mode immediately kicks back into play. She starts looking for any kind of escape routes should they need them. Back in ACOTAR, we saw this very much on display in the Spring Court, and we noted almost every single instance of it. And then earlier in this book, even back at the Moonstone Palace, she was doing the same. And then, of course, now here in the Summer Court. The only place she hasn't had this feeling of needing to look for escape routes is in Velaris. However, I do think that's more due to her depression, and she didn't have the energy to care for her well-being at that time. But it is also a fun little parallel to look at her true home, not needing to have that survival mode kick in.
That's such a good point there. While Feyre has been closely around 2 of the High Lords that gave her a seed of their power. My mind is so in the gutter. This is the first time she's coming face to face with a High Lord she doesn't personally know. And yet, because of this High Lord's contribution to her being made, she does indeed feel this personal connection to him. It's so captivating how this magic and this connection is described. How this little piece of her says, I remember, we are one and the same, you and I. And during the welcome party's greetings, right off the bat, Amren is being Amren, but on a whole new level among outsiders. She compliments Tarquin while simultaneously insulting the former High Lord, understandably causing Cressida to outright glare. Condolences, of course, she added with as much sincerity as a snake. Rhys and Amren have their cruel masks on, although I'll argue Rhys is here more as an ally, not the cruel High Lord of the Night Court, and Feyre is observing their behaviors in this political soiree so she can learn and emulate them. And hey, she's a quick learner, or rather, this suaveness has always been in her, and now she's fully embracing it and refining it.
As Rhys introduces Feyre to Tarquin, he uses no titles, which Feyre wonders if that's because Rhys wants to unnerve them or because he found them as a waste of breath. But I want to throw in another option. I think that it's a nod from Rhys that Feyre and Tarquin are equals. Tarquin may be High Lord of the Summer Court, but Rhys firmly believes that Feyre is of the same status, at least internally. Yes, I think he's trying to unnerve them, and yes, he's playing this role and all that kind of stuff, but I think it's also to show Feyre that Tarquin and her are on even playing fields. And again, it goes back to that you bow to no one. You are no one's subject.
I love that. After she retorts back to Rhys's comment about her breasts being as delicious as ripe apples, it's okay, Feyre, you haven't had children yet. Here I was thinking you had a fascination with my mouth. Delighted surprise lit Rhys's eyes, there and gone in a heartbeat. He's realizing she can play the game. As his mate, he knows that she's his equal, like Nicole was just saying. Though this is being his equal on another level, and he is loving it. At the end of this chapter, when the dinner table is very tense after Rhys promises to kill them all if they send word to Tamlin, Feyre breaks this tension by saying, quote, "No wonder immortality never gets dull," causing a flicker of approval from Rhys down the bond. I just love how she's coming into her own as a key political figure here, even if it's just to break the tension, and he's realizing just how good at this game she is. Feyre can play with the big boys.
I also love this moment because this is brilliant on Rhys's part. Just like Feyre has that feeling of, I remember you, we assume as readers that Tarquin has a similar tug in his body. Rhys is saying something completely vulgar, yes, to knock him off guard, but it's also the verbal, like, hey, my guy, look over here. Like, it's the stop thinking about that and start thinking about her breasts being as delicious as ripe apples. But I think it's more of start thinking about us being the vulgar night court instead. So it's this beautiful manipulation, for lack of a better term, on Rhys's part.
But back to this welcoming. We're introduced to Tarquin, the High Lord of the Summer Court's entourage. His cousins, Cressida, Princess of Adriata, who is cunning and at first wary of this night court crew, and her younger brother, Varian, Prince of Adriata and Captain of Tarquin's Guard, whose attention is wholly fixed on Amaranth. Oh my, I almost said Amarantha there. Whose attention is wholly fixed on Amaranth. I need to note that Feyre does not remember seeing Cressida under the mountain. If we follow the pattern of who Feyre recognizes from Under the Mountain and who she doesn't, this indeed does mean that Cressida was not under the mountain. But wait, shouldn't she have been, being High Fae Summer Court nobility? Well, maybe, but let's also remember that most of these citizens in Adriata had been left in their city, quote, to be tormented. Tarquin will state that Cressida made many sacrifices on behalf of her people. So here's what I think happened. She either hid in Adriata to help her tormented people as much as she could, which is possible. Think of Vivian in the Winter Court who hid from Amarantha. Or she was made to stay in Adriata and suffer along with her people here. I do believe that Cressida was behind the Summer Court's rebellion efforts, specifically the more recent one where Tarquin's other cousin Brutus was caught trying to escape Under the Mountain to meet up with their forces. Anyway, at this greeting, there are also 3 advisors who oversee the city, the court, and the trade, who will learn are there more to watch Tarquin's moves as host, being such a new and inexperienced High Lord, as much as they are there to serve and greet the Night Court guests.
As we move into the first of many dining room scenes in this episode, Tarquin and Rhys walk side by side talking, but Amren stays close to Feyre, quote, as if she was also to be my bodyguard. Amren knows that Rhys and Feyre are mates, and at the end of this book, when they are officially mated, it is Amren who says, quote, we will serve and protect. Rhys most likely did not ask her to be a bodyguard, but instead, this is our natural position for Amren to fall into, given Feyre's importance to Rhys.
I know I keep bringing up the political game, but it is so blatantly on the page as all individuals maneuver with words. I just love how they're sparring with their words right here.
And we know, like Lexi was saying, that this is a test of sorts for Tarquin as a High Lord. And for the most part, he does really well at this, and more on this later. But Rhys asks if there's any valuables that were lost or taken in the attack on Adriata from Amarantha. Tarquin responds with, quote, not the most important things, thank the mother. Tarquin is a trusting High Lord. Like I said in the ICD, he is the goodest of Golden Retriever boys. He really wants to have a good relationship with Rhys and the Night Court. Plus, he was also never primed as a High Lord. He is young, at least by High Fae standards. He's 80, and he was 40 when he was made High Lord. He does not know how to play the courtly politics. He wasn't trained under the mountain, and thank goodness for that.
I'll argue that he can, I'll even say innately play the courtly politics, but he doesn't come at it with malicious intent like so many of the other High Lords.
I can vibe with that. He gives me like Major Jon Snow vibes. He never quite learns how to scheme, like Lannister level scheming, or plan ahead and be ruthless like Dany, but his heart is always so good.
Well, it reminds me of the famous Dumbledore quote, "It is a curious thing, but perhaps those who are best suited to power are those who have never sought it."
God, I love that quote. That's so good.
Tarquin asks the carefully crafted question about how the lands Fae-vorite has seen compared to here, aka she has been to the Night Court, where very few outsiders are allowed to visit, and it is known for its secrets. But Fae-vorite knows better than to start gushing about how lovely Velaris is, by replying vaguely that everything in Prythian is lovely compared to the mortal realm. She and Tarquin, they're feeling each other out right here, masked by polite questions and flattery of one another.
Plus, there's these words in Fae-vorite's inner monologue, like, quote, "Such a carefully crafted question," after Tarquin asks something of her. This type of writing makes us as readers feel like we are right alongside in this calculation and hyper-analyzing everything he says. It's the perfect tone setter for our time here in the Summer Court, and our perfect tone setter for courtly politics going forward, especially as we get into the first part of ACOMAF in the Summer Court. Fae-vorite then kicks up a flirting notch with Tarquin. Quote, "I do not remember you being quite so handsome under the mountain." This is the first time we see Fae-vorite outright flirt like this. Not the steamy, heated flirting that we see with Rhys, but the kind of complimenting someone, like being kind flirting. This is very new for Fae-vorite, and she's already doing so much better than Tamlin did in our first few episodes of ACOTAR. I give it A- here because it is a little abrupt. It's like, whoa, like that came out of nowhere, but it's still off to a good start.
She does take it from like 0 to 50 real fast. I would definitely take a few points down for that abruptness. I give it more like a yeah, I give it more of a B.
Okay.
A for effort, but But then he hits her with the most direct question of all. How exactly does Fae-vorite fit within Rhys's court? We have to remember that the last time he saw Fae-vorite was under the mountain when she sacrificed everything and proclaimed her undying love for Tamlin. We'll soon find out that he's heard rumors about what happened with Tamlin and that the Night Court saved her, not kidnapped, but saved. So yeah, he's naturally like, what the fuck is going on? But in a polite, high ward way of asking.
Especially because she just kicked flirting up to level 50 with him.
Yeah.
Later, Fae-vorite even wonders if she's any better than Ianthe, which obviously she is. She's not directly assaulting Tarquin, but this is kind of a like, whoa, what the fuck moment from Tarquin. He literally just heard Rhysand compliment her breasts and her say, "I thought you had a fascination with my mouth," which that entails some, behind doors kind of stuff. And here Tarquin is being like, "And now you're coming on to me? Girl, what's going on?"
I mean, no shade, Farrah. Like, you do whatever you want, but there's going to be some questions about it.
She's collecting High Lords like Pokemon cards over here. I love it for her.
Last episode, we discussed how Nesta asked a similar question about what Fae-vorite identifies as, and Fae-vorite is really lost with that answer. She doesn't know where she fits in or who she fits in with yet. Luckily, Rhys recognizes this and answers for her with confidence. She's his emissary to the mortal lands and a member of his inner circle. While not stated, being part of his inner circle means your family. There's that underlining meaning there, but more outwardly, he's saying that she doesn't belong to him, but she works with him. She serves a bigger purpose and contributes to the greater goal. She is worthy and an active member of the society. Unlike how Tamlin thought of her.
As Fae-vorite and Tarquin are going back and forth, Fae-vorite looks out at the water and describes it in that painter's palette eye that we got so used to back in ACOTAR. But then she says, quote, "I might need to paint it." Those two words, might need, there is such a longing in them, but there's also that uncertainty. And that's exactly what Fae-vorite is feeling in regards to her creativity. As they all sit down at the dining table, Tarquin claims the seat at the head of the table between Rhys and Amren, which Fae-vorite notes as a bold move on Tarquin's part, given these two powerful beings are on either side of him. But Amren and Rhys must have known when they sat down that Tarquin would sit at the head of the table. So I think that this is them actually trying to get him on an uneven footing in a bold move and a power move on their part by sitting at his two sides so that he can't sit with his inner circle, quote unquote.
While Rhys sniffing his wine comes off as a low blow to the summer court for insinuating that they poisoned his wine, I just have to say that's exactly how Amarantha tricked them all out of their powers. So while yes, it's definitely a bit of a power move, it's also smart and what he should be doing. This is the exact reason Cassian wanted to come to the summer court so badly. All of the courts are on their toes after Amarantha. Their trust in one another is broken because once they did trust someone and it had deadly consequences. You might think her reign would bring the courts together in camaraderie, but they are so on edge and their own divisions go back centuries. So they're all walking on eggshells. They don't necessarily know who to trust as they're all on their guard. After they eat, Rhys will even promise, not threaten as he clarifies, that if they send word to Tamlin about Feyre's being here, their lives are forfeit, which, yikes. Things start off tense, and it shows that ultimately these niceties are just that, niceties, and each court will protect their own people first and foremost.
This is also a moment of that protective mate stepping in and saying, you take my mate away, you're dead. Now, obviously, no one in this room knows that Feyre is Rhys's mate except for Rhys and Amren. But if they did, this topic of Tamlin's war over Feyre, this would be a very different conversation. Which, side note, when Feyre will tell her, I'm going to put major air quotes, joke about no wonder immortality never gets dull, and Tarquin loosens out a sigh of relief, Tarquin doesn't like conflict. We see this in him, but he is a High Lord who will stand up for his court, especially when Rhys threatens its peace. But that profound relief is so relatable on Tarquin's part. I know that if I'm in a situation that is profoundly awkward and then someone does something to like break the tension, they instantly become my favorite person in the room just from sheer like, oh, thank God.
That's something that your sister-in-law Megan is really good at.
Oh, she's so good at it. Oh my God, I love her for it. She's amazing.
But we're getting ahead of ourselves because we need to talk about how war came up in conversation, in which Tarquin confirms that they will fight against Hybern, but only against Hybern. They want to know if Rhys is asking them to ally with him in a war against the Spring Court, assuming Tamlin wants to go to war over, quote, such an unusual female. Feyre thinks Tamlin wouldn't be foolish enough to do such a thing. But do we readers agree? Nicole's just like, nope, I don't agree with that at all.
He would do this in a heartbeat. I'm actually surprised he didn't do this. He just did something stupider.
I have so much to go on about that. But anyway, Tamlin believes she was taken from him against her will, and he is going crazy with worry trying to get her back. He will go to extensive lengths by bargaining with Hybern to retrieve her. However, the real concern here is that, as Cressida points out, the law is the law. In the eyes of the Spring Court, Feyre is a stolen bride, and it is entirely within Tamlin's right to wage war to get her back. Now, there are some questionable technicalities here because Moore, quote, did everything by the book in retrieving Feyre from the Spring Court to prevent this outright war. But at this point, across Prythian, that's kind of lost in the news spreading. Feyre may be shocked by this possibility now, but later she will seriously question it and even offer to go back just to avoid more death. The protector in her refuses to believe war over her is a possibility, though she's not quite seeing what everyone else here sees, how much of a treasure she is. In power, yes, but also in empathy, strength, and cunning as a leader. Cressida may be being a bitch and a half, especially referring to Tamlin as Feyre's master, yikes, and essentially threatening to send a letter to Tamlin and rat out her whereabouts. But let's look at this from her perspective. Her top priority is protecting the people of Adriata, her people. She's not looking at the situation from Tarquin's point of view, where they owe their very lives to Feyre, but rather she is looking ahead and doesn't just have her guard up, but she's on the offensive here, willing to do what she has to keep her people safe from a civil war. I have to wonder if she tries to get in Rhys's pants as her own political ploy to get close to him and learn what more they're up to. I also, of course, have the crack theory here that there's a little something more to Cressida's interest in Tamlin. During our ACOTAR deep dive, I explained my Tamlin and Cressida are exes theory, and I simply have to bring it up here again. Tamlin has mentioned to Feyre that he has had many lovers in his life, including princesses, and it would make sense for them to be ex-lovers, since the spring and summer court are neighbors and have more or less good relations. Cressida in particular has a stick up her butt about Tamlin's bride leaving him, and I just want you all to reread this scene with the perspective that she has her own history with him. It would give that extra oomph to her attitude here talking to Feyre. Plus, it would add more weight to her statement, quote, "So it is a very good thing that he respects your decisions," which, wow, what a weighted comment, because we all know he doesn't. What if Tamlin didn't respect Cressida's decisions way back when? And that's also why she's calling him Feyre's master, because she has personally experienced Tamlin's controlling nature and temper, and she naturally has a distaste for Feyre. Not quite out of jealousy, I don't think it's that, but just because she doesn't like anyone else romantically associated with Tamlin. I'm not saying that we're ever going to find out or that this has any weight to our entire story, but I like to think this theory is true just for the added context.
This theory is so canon in my head. Like, it is stamp of approval. And also, side note, later when Cressida sees that Feyre is wearing that black diamond necklace that Tarquin gives her, she gives this like backhanded compliment. And that is so something a crazy ex-girlfriend would say, like 100%. So it's canon, at least in my head, it's head canon.
Let's turn our attention back to this mission, because yes, the ultimate goal here at the Summer Court is to retrieve the half of the Book of Breathings, but also make sure not to get caught. Beyond obvious reasons, Rhys and Feyre soon enough actually likes Tarquin. He is a good male, who will get more into him being a dream or two shortly, and you can tell that while Rhys is perfectly willing to do what he has to, he wants to be extra careful so not to jeopardize this budding relationship. I won't say he feels bad, because it's not quite that far, but he doesn't feel good about who they are stealing from.
I think they see the aligned values that they share in wanting to make the world a better place. It's easy for Rhys and Feyre to steal from someone who does deserve it. Tarquin doesn't. But that doesn't stop them because of being part of this morally gray outlook on the greater mission. More on that morally gray outlook later. Enough politics for right now, because let's talk about jealousy. Rhys asks Feyre if she likes having Tarquin thirsting after her. I do think that she's the one who started flirting, so I'm gonna, I might challenge that wording there, but anyway. And how, quote, having a high lord lusting after you is a dangerous game. How meta, given the fact that he is a high lord lusting after Feyre, given that he is literally in love with her. But the sexual tension is only ramping up. Rhys prowls over towards her and leans his hands on either side of Feyre against the dresser, caging her in between his body and the dresser. Feyre refuses to shrink away from his gaze, literally being nose to nose with him. The most powerful high lord in Prythian is literally inches away from her, bearing down on her soul, and she does not shrink away. Yet another hint that these two are equals. But back to jealousy.
Feyre asks what if she has to fuck Tarquin for the book. Rhys says that she can ride him if she wants, but Feyre knows it's false.
I love this jealous Rhys writing with the wood groaning beneath his hands, but it's also mixed with him still reminding her that she has freedom to do whatever she wants. Recall the moment in chapter 54 when Rhys says if she chose to go through with the wedding, he would have found a way to live with it. If she chooses to fuck Tarquin for information, which they both know she won't, Rhys would give her space to make her own choices. Again, it goes back to that word choice, the theme throughout this book. This game of get some dick chicken ends with a fine from each of them, but Rhys doesn't back away from his place framing her on the dresser. Rhys nods to Feyre to light a candle on the dresser, and we know up until this point that Feyre's magic comes out when she's really pissed off, specifically at Rhys. But I wonder here if Rhys is testing her, if all of that magic will also come out when she's a different kind of elevated, if you will. Also, regardless.
Shall I get the wing leader?
Shall I get the... miss you, Taryn. Regardless, Feyre, in an attempt to light the candle, sends a bucket of water at it instead. I love the line where Rhys is like, can't you ever follow orders? Like, that's one of my favorite lines in the book. Feyre wonders if being close to Tarquin makes it easier for her water magic to come to the surface, for lack of a better term. And if that's the case, I've got two questions. Number one, why does that not work with Rhys and his darkness? Because the one time that Rhys was like, summon darkness, she couldn't. And also, is this why it's so easy for her to slip into his mind, in addition to it being the mating bond? But it's like, oh, because she's closer to him, the Daemati powers are easier to tap into.
I love that idea. That would be a really interesting take, like with that subtext there. The same question, however, can be asked of her with Tamlin. The claws only came out that one time. Maybe because she was emotionally disconnected and subconsciously falling out of love with him at the time.
I like that a lot. But continuing to flex her new water muscle, Fae-vorite makes all the water droplets rise up and surround them, quote, sparkling crystals on a chandelier. And then she hurls them all towards Rhys's face. This is insanely cool while simultaneously being completely hilarious and so Fae-vorite and Rhysand.
I just love seeing her start experimenting with her powers. I can't wait to talk more about this shortly.
Same. Conversation moves to Fae-vorite admitting that she doesn't want to go back to Tamlin, but she would if it means stopping a war, which Rhys lets some of his anger show, saying that Tamlin knew how good Fae-vorite was and he wanted to keep her locked up and all to himself. Personally, do I think that those were Tamlin's intentions? No, at least not consciously, I'll say it that way. But we need to look at this from Rhys's POV. Rhys held so much hatred for Tamlin in regards to his family's death. Then he was jealous of Tamlin for having the woman that he was in love with and the woman who is his mate. Not to mention, he also views Tamlin as a high lord who sits idly by while others do his dirty work. Of course, this is how he views Tamlin's motives in his relationship with Fae-vorite. But Fae-vorite recognizes this animosity, I'll call it, and tells Rhys that Tamlin does love her. Note that she says he does love me, changing it to still present tense. To which Rhys replies with, quote, the issue isn't whether he loved you, it is how much, too much, love can be a poison. This line is interesting because Rhys will come to love Fae-vorite so deeply and intimately that Fae-vorite thinks, quote, maybe love was too weak a word for what he felt for me. But Rhys and Fae-vorite's love is absolutely not a poison. Maybe when they make the bargain at the end of ACOMAF, but we'll get to that later. Last book, we dissected Fae-vorite's view on love and how her past relationships with Isaac and Tamlin and her experience with her family were a huge factor in Fae-vorite's mindset around the word love. Now I want to look at Rhys's outlook on love. He loves his family so much that he went to literally become Amarantha's whore for 50 years. He loved his sister and mother deeply and they were taken away. He believes that anyone he loves as a wife or a child will be hunted their whole lives and thus will come to resent the burden that comes with being associated with him in the Night Court. Fae-vorite will open his eyes to what love can be when shared with the right person, and just like he shows her this too, not poisonous at all.
Healthy partnerships bring out the best in each other, where they empower one another to grow as individuals and together. And that is not at all the kind of love Tamlin has for Fae-vorite. Being in the summer court, I bet our crew is sweating more than ever, and they need to hydrate. Now, Nicole, have you ever told yourself that you're going to start drinking a gallon of water every day? Maybe even getting one of those fancy water bottles because that'll make everything better. I feel like we all go through this phase at least once. And look, it's so important to stay hydrated. But healthy hydration isn't just about drinking water. It's about water and electrolytes. But most of us only worry about water when trying to stay hydrated.
Past me feels so added by you right now because I had one of those giant water bottles and it was a half gallon and I tried to drink 2 of them a day. So wow, you really saw me a few years ago. The solution is obviously not to stop drinking water though. It's to drink water plus electrolytes. Enter Element. Element is an electrolyte solution that has enough sodium, potassium, and magnesium to get you feeling and performing your best. Plus, my favorite part is that it has no sugars, 0 sugars, artificial flavors, and other dodgy ingredients to hold you back.
My favorite part of Element is the variety of fun flavors. I love going through my variety pack and trying out all the different flavors. It's summertime and I am living for the watermelon salt and orange salt flavors. Oh, or pro tip, mix chocolate salt into your morning coffee to really kickstart your day.
We were just talking with Hayden, our sanity manager, about our love for the watermelon salt flavor because it is endless. I love that flavor so much. Element has
it really does make its way into our business chat. Yes.
Element has come up with a fantastic offer for us. Just go to drinklmnt.com/FFG. That's drinkelement.com/FFG to get a free sample pack with any purchase. Thank you so much, Element. It is time for a boat dining room. This dining boat is made of wood and gold. It's huge with over 100 high fae on board. The main deck has couches and low tables, and the upper deck has one long main dining table. SJM is just laughing at me right now. She is tormenting me with all these freaking dining rooms. This is a double-decker yacht dining room.
Cue Lonely Islands. I'm on a boat with my flippy flappies. I literally had to pull up that YouTube because as I was doing this outline and I was just singing it all the whole time.
Stay tuned for our socials this week because I'm sure that's going to make it on there.
Oh, absolutely it is.
On this giant dining boat, aka the pleasure barge, which in case you didn't know, like me, what a pleasure barge is, here you go. A pleasure barge is a flat-bottom, slow-moving boat that is used for leisure. You're welcome.
Sounds like T-Pain's yacht. I'm on a boat. He was featured in that, yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. I was like, I don't know what T-Pain's yacht looks like.
It's just more Lonely Island. Don't mind me. And my flippy floppies. Okay, I'm done. I promise.
I doubt that. When we first get to the summer court, Feyre notices that there are merchant vessels in the bay. And I kid you not, this is word for word what I wrote in my ebook notes. Quote, oh my God, what is the summer court known for? Jewels. What did Papa Archeron have in his study in addition to spices? Jewels. What if, in addition to Papa Archeron's...
I can't. I'm sorry. I love it. I love it. I'm not laughing at you. I am laughing with you. I promise.
I mostly believe you. What if, in addition to Papa Archeron's ancestors trading with Valaris for spices, what if they also traded jewels with Adriata? Because what was another place that they took heavy losses during Amarantha's reign, probably hurting trade? Adriata. And it probably hurt trade enough for a family to go into debt for 3 generations, including their loss of income from Valaris trade. I also want to note that the 2 goods that are brought up in Valaris and Adriata for being traded are connected to Papa Archeron. Just saying. Spice Watch.
I love it so much.
This is so canon in my head. I don't even care if it never gets confirmed. It is so true to the story that it's just there.
I'm also just laughing because that just didn't even cross my mind as I'm reading this.
It is all I thought of after I wrote these. After I wrote this in my ebook notes. As Feyre and Tarquin talk about class and wealth and class lines, Feyre mentions how her father regained his wealth and, quote, my heart tightened, then dropped into my stomach. This is a beautiful show don't tell from Feyre when it comes to feeling guilty about Tamlin's role in regaining her family's wealth and status. Also, this is just another relatable moment when you're fresh out of a breakup and something reminds you of them. This is that exact feeling, that heart dropping into the pit of your stomach. Oh my God. That's I didn't even know that's what it felt like until I saw those words on the page.
She doesn't just get over her breakup. Tamlin's not present, but he's still on the page in between the lines because she doesn't just move on from this relationship. Feyre has had that pivotal moment in her healing journey that we talked so much about last episode, yes. But that doesn't just wash away all of the associated emotions because Tamlin was a very important and big part of her life. And it's so much more complicated than simply moving on after her breakthrough in the training ring with Cassian. I love how that is hinted at in so many ways throughout this entire book.
Feyre is so taken aback by Tarquin's kindness and good nature that she admits it would be very easy to fall in love with him and even easier to call him a friend. Which...
I love that.
That's so sweet. That's so nice. Again, It's a little abrupt and a little out of nowhere. Like if I was someone receiving that information, I'd be like, you're coming on a little strong. I need you to pull back.
Well, let's talk about their conversation about class prejudices and Tarquin's vision for a better, more equal world.
Feyre mentions how class lines in Prythian are blurred and how in the Mortal Lands you either have money or you are left to starve and fight for your survival. I want to talk about that. In Prythian, class lines are blurred because Feyre, did you forget about the tithe? In Valaris, yes, I definitely agree class lines are blurred. But not in Illyria, not in the Hewn City, and most definitely not in the Spring Court. Have you forgotten the majority of the places you've been to? Now, to be fair, she hasn't been to Illyria yet, but she's heard about it.
Well, I think it's so interesting how Tarquin is asking her questions about the mortal realm out of genuine curiosity because she is in such a unique position of having lived and experienced both worlds. The way Fae-vorite perfectly captures the mortal realm's class system, quote, "Without magic, without power, money has become the only thing that matters." But yeah, you're right, Nicole. These similar class lines are defined more so by species. As Tarquin points out, Prythian isn't so different from the human realm, whereas even the lowest of high fae servants have more rights than the wealthiest of lesser fairies in some courts. Tarquin wants to eliminate the inherent privileges of high fae over the lesser fairies and live in a world where these fairies have a voice both in his home and the world beyond. He acknowledges that he is a young and inexperienced High Lord, but he still has seen a lot in his years, half of which, and almost all of his time being a High Lord, have been under Amarantha's reign. He has seen the cruelties firsthand, specifically to lesser fairies, simply because they are not high fae. We, the readers, even saw a glimpse of this cruelty back in ACOTAR with the Summer Court fairy whose wings were ripped off and bled to death.
Tarquin mentions that others might see him as inexperienced or foolish for wanting such a thing, but he wants to make a better world for those who suffer for merely being born on the wrong side of power. Tarquin is giving such young generation who sees the ways of those who are older and more stuck in their ways, and instead wants to change the systems of and how things are run. I love Tarquin. Tarquin's honestly one of my favorite characters in this entire series.
Well, it brings us to one of the other common themes in this stretch of chapters, the idea of tradition versus dreamers. Like other courts, the Summer Court has deep-set traditions. Tarquin is pressured by tradition to enforce the rules of his predecessors, that lesser fairies are neither seen nor heard as they work in the High Lord's residences. We'll also glean that, despite his kindness and open-mindedness, he wouldn't have given up the half of the book if asked for it. We'll soon see how their treasures are valued, based more thanks to tradition rather than true value upon these troves. In the Spring Court, we've seen firsthand how Tamlin upholds traditions, the tithe being the front and center example. Tarquin is a dreamer stuck in a traditional world, unable to get the support from his fellow nobles to make progress as of right now. Tamlin sticks to tradition because it's what he knows, what is comfortable. He doesn't have these same grand visions like Tarquin or Rhys. Think of how Rhys has been working against some of the deeply ingrained traditions of the Night Court, specifically at the Illyrian camps, and banishing wing clipping, trying to train the females. Even he has difficulty and knows which fights to pick. Tradition among these immortals are deeper than we mere mortals can possibly fathom. High Lords like Tarquin and Rhys want to fundamentally change thousands of years of how their societies have been. That does not happen overnight or even in 1 century, but simply daring to dream, daring to take those first steps toward change need to be taken, and they are brave enough to do so. Tarquin's first step is simply voicing it, even if he is laughed at by everyone except Fae-vorite.
Let's get back to jealousy, though, because Fae-vorite looks over and sees Cressida and Rhys flirting to the point where she's literally almost in his lap. And what does Fae-vorite start calling him in this moment in her inner monologue? Rhysand, his full name, not Rhys that we've grown rather accustomed to. She will continue calling him Rhysand, mostly with the occasional Rhys, until the scene where they clink glasses and toast to the people who look at the stars and wish. There are obviously many reasons Rhysand is doing this for the bigger mission, but I also think this might have slightly been prompted by Fae-vorite mentioning fucking Tarquin, and especially given the irony that Fae-vorite just admitted how easily it would be to fall in love with Tarquin, and then she looks over, it's like the next paragraph, and she looks over and she's like, God damn it, I'm jealous, even though she just admitted that it'd be easy to fall in love with you.
Well, and then of course that stirs up all sorts of emotions within Rhys,
which we'll talk more about later. And Fae-vorite starts to feel real shame for wanting to throttle Cressida. She goes on to think about how Rhysand has teased her, but he's never seduced her with these intense stares and half smiles. This again is such a relatable moment. Jealousy brings out the most insecure side of all of us. And here Fae-vorite is thinking how Rhysand has never treated her the same way he's treating Cressida right now, second guessing their moments together and wondering if it's just him, needing to keep the newest member of his inner circle together, aka more scheming. And to be honest, it makes sense. Under the mountain, Rhysand did what whatever he could without breaking his facade to make sure that she stayed mentally intact. He also schemed around the Weaver, around her writing lessons, around her getting her to winnow last episode. It makes sense that in this moment of jealousy and insecurity, Feyre finds herself feeling this way and second-guessing every moment of his flirtation, wondering if it was scheming instead. We do, however, know the truth that he is finding comfort within Feyre. This book is Feyre's healing journey because we are in her POV, but it is also the parallel healing journey between two lonely and broken people coming together. But between all of this jealousy, Feyre realizes something. She's been lonely for a long time, and how it was a relief for her to think that Rhysand was as lonely as her. But she's also been lonely longer than coming to the Night Court and breaking up with Tamlin. We highlighted how lonely Feyre felt in the Spring Court, and part of that was because the seducing, the flirting, the dating, the physical activities with Tamlin all slowed down and then basically stopped altogether. She was no longer a priority for him. Also, side note, friends, friendly reminder, never stop dating your partner. Some good does come out of this moment, though. Feyre, while feeling deeply unhappy and leaving the main part of the double-decker dining room, she's having an emotion, though. Quote, rather than unending emptiness or survival-driven terror. This is a big deal alert for our girl Feyre. In excusing herself to go get some fresh air, despite literally being on an outside dining boat, she thinks how Tarquin will never understand the darkness that lives within her from under the mountain. Let us remember last episode where Rhysand gave her the darkness speech, showing her how darkness is not all bad, and there is darkness that lives within us, but we can learn to live with it. Even though Feyre is lost in her jealousy, we as readers immediately get the neon sign that, oh, Rhysand, he does understand the darkness within her.
Once again, illustrating how similar these two are and how they're meant to be together. They're drawn to each other in part because of the darkness within each of them. They are equals. They are each other's match. It goes beyond fate making them mates. They are truly soulmates. I absolutely love this line that perfectly describes Feyre and why she was never suited for the Spring Court, but fits right in at the Night Court. Quote, that I might always be a little bit vicious or restless, that I might crave peace, but never a cage of comfort. This writing, I love it. I get chills whenever I read that.
But that jealousy, it does not go away when they dock the boat and Rhysand and Cressida are nowhere to be seen. They're fucking!
The first time I read this and was just along for the ride, I was like, wait, what? He wouldn't. Now, of course, I know he wouldn't. But in the moment, I was fully in Feyre's POV and so worried about this wrench in their budding love story.
I was fully convinced they were fucking. I was like, how are we going to like him again after this? This is going to be quite a twist. The next morning, after waking up from a dream where she's being turned over a spit, which, side note, remember, that's what Amarantha's guards threatened to do with Feyre last book if she didn't finish scrubbing the floors with the dirty water. Feyre thinks about how she's grateful that she didn't hear any noises of the sexual nature coming from Rhysand's room last night. And we immediately know that this jealousy train has not left the station. So instead of going down for breakfast and facing what she fears, being too sex-addled high fae, Feyre decides to stay in her room until the meeting with Tarquin at noon. This is a perfect moment that reminds us readers, oh, that's right, Feyre is a 20-year-old girl. Like, she's not 500, she's not even 80, she is 20, and yeah, of course she's going to stay in her room rather than facing her fears or facing the jealousy. I would have done this at 20, I'll be real. Some good does come out of this time in her room, though, water practice.
Another common theme throughout this stretch of chapters is Feyre's waterbending powers. Yes, I am still calling it waterbending because Avatar will always live rent-free in my head, and that's just way better than saying water manipulation.
In the bath, Feyre starts making water rise from the tub and then shapes them into little animals. This is so cool. And it is also one of the first time we see Feyre using her powers, not from training, not from trying to get information from Rhys, but because she's genuinely curious to play around with it.
Feeling that strength of Tarquin's water magic thanks to their proximity and probably being the summer court that blessed him with that power, it helps Feyre gain confidence in her own abilities. Yes, it's Tarquin's power, but she'll gradually own that power within herself and recognize what magic she possesses as hers. And it's not Rhysand training her right now. It's not something she's told to make happen. She's having fun and, like you said, Nicole, being curious about what she's able to do.
Down in the vaults filled with jewels, though, we're in tour day with Tarquin. Tarquin shows Feyre around as she casts her power out for anything that feels like that call to Tarquin's fingerprint within her. But she keeps coming up short. So she asks Tarquin, quite literally, outright, what's the most valuable thing in here? I'm not going to lie. Fae-vorite is just all about kicking things up to level 100 when she's talking with Tarquin. It's the perfect show don't tell of, yes, she's learning how to scheme. Yes, she's learning how to be a court manipulator, but she's also still learning. She's still a beginner at this. These are two people who are not quite adept at playing the game yet, even though Fae-vorite is learning very quickly. I will give her that. But Tarquin boy comes back with the flirting. He says, quote, I'd say I'm looking at the most valuable thing in here. It works well with my cold voice because it's all low today.
You all, can you tell that I gave Nicole the cold that I was really suffering with last week?
I can't wait for us to record when we're not sick, like 5 years from now, apparently.
I know. I'm just like, I'm on week 2 of this thing, and I've just accepted that I'm always going to be sick from now on.
No, we'll get there someday. Now, this, I'm looking at the most valuable thing in here, is the cheesiest line, but if we're giving our grades out, I do give it an A for effort. He's matching her flirting.
Bluntness.
However, would, if someone said this to me, I would laugh in their face. Like, respectfully, kindly, I would laugh in their face. In fact, actually, I think Brett did say something similar to me once, and I literally laughed out loud at him. I love him. He's just a little cheesy, though, and I love it about him. It's why he is Tarquin. But Tarquin does make Fae-vorite blush here, which later she'll wonder when her and Rhysand are clinking glasses to the stars who wish, and, you know, Rhys's gaze is penetrating into her. Wink.
Yeah, penetrating her, yeah.
Ew. She'll wonder why she even bothered blushing for Tarquin.
It's okay, Tarquin. There are plenty of ladies in the ACOTAR fandom that would melt at your stare.
Fae-vorite looks around and a necklace of black diamonds catches her eye, which Tarquin ends up giving her as a thank you for Under the Mountain. Quick gem watch. Black diamonds symbolize justice, which is appropriate considering Tarquin's mission and how Fae-vorite is the first person who didn't laugh it off. And it also symbolizes inner strength and healing. Also very appropriate for this moment. Fae-vorite earlier mentions how she's feeling an emotion for once instead of just absolute numbness, which, speaking of Fae-vorite's healing, Fae-vorite didn't realize until after a while that she was in a deep place underground that previously would have been very triggering to her for her Under the Mountain PTSD. This is a big moment in anyone's healing journey where those triggers are no longer at the forefront of your brain, and it almost like dawns on you later or even after the fact. And it's just such an exciting moment. You're like, yes, I'm healing. It's working.
Fae-vorite's inner battle within herself really comes to the forefront when spending the afternoon checking out these treasures with Tarquin. The problem with being a bloodhound on the hunt for this book is that Tarquin is quite the likable High Lord, which didn't seem to be on Fae-vorite's bingo card. She feels like a fox in the chicken coop. Note that she doesn't call herself a wolf here, like she did when entering her sister's house. She'll think to herself in so many words multiple times throughout these chapters, quote, thief, liar, manipulator. I didn't deserve his alliance. She genuinely wonders if asking for the book is the best route, but it requires more trust than she is willing to give. As kind as Tarquin is, at the end of the day, he is still a High Lord. And she may be new to these courtly politics, but she knows there are lines in the sand, and she cannot jeopardize this mission by exposing their true purpose. As much as she believes in the greater good, as much as she stays true to her task of finding and stealing this book, Fae-vorite, to put it simply, feels bad. She even admits to hating herself for doing this to Tarquin. Well, unfortunately, among other reasons to hate herself, but she really does feel like that in this moment. She might be a little bit vicious, but she's still a protector, an empathetic individual who gave a water wraith her jewelry when no one else would have ever done so. But still, Fae-vorite is someone who recognizes the end game and will do what she has to achieve it, including like kill 2 innocent Fae to save all of Prythian. Fae-vorite's guilt of stealing from Tarquin will only heighten as the days pass. Even Rhysand will eventually admit that he doesn't like stealing from him because Tarquin would indeed be a good ally, and that is something the Night Court unfortunately but understandably lacks. Speaking of, Tarquin unofficially proposes an alliance with Fae-vorite. He recognizes that she is close with Rhysand, who is, quote, notoriously difficult to deal with. He wants her to be an emissary to the Summer Court, a bridge to the Night Court and specifically its High Lord. Tarquin admits that he has been warned by pretty much everybody that Rhysand is a bad guy, but he has experienced a different side of him and is, I'll say, curious and intrigued by Rhysand's real intentions and motives. Rhysand spared his cousin and lied to Amarantha, which went against his whole mask of being her lapdog under the mountain. Tarquin even says, quote, sometimes I think Rhysand, I think he might have been her whore to spare us all from her full attention. Wow, that's a big deal for another High Lord to identify that in Rhysand. And he goes a step further, bringing it right back to Feyre. Remember at the top of this Cauldron segment, I highlighted how Feyre went into the summer court under the guise of being Rhysand's pet. But Tarquin is showing how observant he is, that this is simply a mask, and he calls it out, and that there is much more to Feyre and Rhysand and the Night Court than meets the eye. Tarquin's transparency continues when he bluntly asks if it's true Feyre left Tamlin because he locked her up in his house. Tarquin values freedom and equality. We've established that about him. So the fact that another High Lord did this to Feyre makes him second guess the narrative that Cressida laid out a few days ago at their first dinner. Instead of thinking of Feyre as a stolen bride who is owned by Tamlin, I think he's pieced together that the Night Court saved her from confinement. Or, we do have to wonder, Alice is indeed in communication with her family remaining in the summer court. Did she have anything to do with telling this truth? I actually don't really think so. That would be too difficult for her family, even if they do know the truth, to get that all the way up to the High Lord of the Summer Court. I think more than anything, this showcases Tarquin's aptitude for reading the real situation at hand. After learning the rumor that yes, Tamlin locked her up, but he's also putting the puzzle pieces together with the respect and freedom the Night Court has granted her. This podcast is brought to you by Squarespace. We at Fantasy Fangirls recently launched our new website, of course through Squarespace, but for the longest time before starting this new project, I felt so overwhelmed with which tools to use and how to create this website. It felt like such a daunting task that, quite frankly, we didn't have time for until Squarespace entered the picture and we actually began building the website. I kid you not, it was so easy, and this big scary project instead became so much fun and streamlined.
Whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything from products to content to time, all in one place, all on your terms.
My favorite part of using Squarespace was using Squarespace Blueprint, a tool that empowers you to start a completely personalized website and choose from professionally curated layout and styling options to build a unique online presence from the ground up. Easily launch your website and get discovered fast with integrated, optimized SEO tools so you show up more often to more people and grow the way you want. And for all of our fantasy fangirls who are out there selling their own products, Squarespace's client invoicing allows you to easily manage your clients and invoices, letting you receive payment via invoices in one streamlined, customizable workflow.
Squarespace really can work for anyone. Head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and then when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/FFG to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you so much, Squarespace. We love our website. Back to some jealousy, but this time it's Rhysand's version. After visiting rooms filled with clothes, treasure, books, not the book we want though, Tarquin then opens a door filled with art, and Feyre immediately decides that she is done with museums for the day. She is making leaps and bounds in her own healing journey, but facing art and facing her creative side, that is not something she's ready to do yet. So instead, she goes back to her room. And who is chilling on the bed but Rhysand? All it takes is showing him her newest black diamond gift for him to flare his jealousy muscle. Earlier, when it's time to meet up with Tarquin for her tour, Feyre again is showcasing that jealousy does not bring out the best side of her, and she passive-aggressively ignores Rhysand for the entire time. However, with Feyre and Rhysand's connection, she could feel the same dark, flickering emotion that haunts her also ripple through Rhysand. This is a beautiful clue to us readers that Rhysand is also feeling that jealousy of Feyre and Tarquin, just like she was feeling between Rhysand and Cressida. So what did Feyre do in that moment? Calm down and soften to Rhysand, and now they're common ground? Absolutely not. She stepped closer to Tarquin and gave him a, quote, pretty, mindless smile that I had not given to anyone in a long time. And her bond with Rhysand went silent. To which Feyre thought, good. Wow. Now, Rhysand, while jealous, he was technically doing the same thing last night with Cressida, maybe a little less vindictive, I'll call it. But the moment Feyre smiled at Tarquin, quote, the brush of emotion went still. We learn in the scene in Feyre's bedroom back to this moment that it got quite under Rhysand's skin that she smiled at Tarquin and that he overheard her say it would be easy to fall in love with someone like Tarquin. Rhys is jealous of Tarquin's neutrality and how no one will be hunting him for his entire life like they're hunting Rhysand. But Rhys also fears that here is his mate saying it would be easy to fall in love with that security, and he he fears that she will not love him back for this particular reason, and that he's not enough to make someone risk leaving that easiness and security. He also fears that he's not even good enough to make his own mate smile. Rhys! Oh, but I want to zero in on this word easy that keeps coming up in our story. Last episode, Fae-vorite talked about how flirting with Rhys and thus being around him, it feels easy. And here he is showing that vulnerability that he fears he will never have a partner who views him that way, even though Fae-vorite already does.
It's such a heartbreaking line when Rhys says, quote, "What got under my skin is that you smiled at him." He's been trying so hard to nurture Fae-vorite, help her reignite that spark of life again, and he has been very successful in his efforts to help her do so. But here he feels that she is giving that smile that I don't want to say is owed to him, because he's not in a territorial sort of way, but it really is just in a hurt way that she's giving that smile to another male when he's really put in the effort. He put in the work for that smile, goddammit.
Did you like the sight of me kneeling before you? That is work right there. This is easily one of the most vulnerable moments we share with Rhys. And to show him thanks for being so open with her, Fae-vorite pours him some amber liquid and goes to clink his glass. Quote, "To the people who look up at the stars and wish, Rhys." This is a big moment for Rhys and Fae-vorite's love story. This is her saying, I see you, I am aligned with you, not others like Tarquin. Rhys is someone who is a dreamer. He had a vision of the direction of the Night Court, and it is the reason that he is not like his father and instead rules with honor and compassion, at least when he's not having to put on a mask to protect those he loves. Because even then, it is still with honor for just, he just has a mask on. Rhys is the person who looks up at the stars and wishes, but so is Fae-vorite. Fae-vorite was very against the idea of hope when she was living in poverty, but she still had dreams of getting her sisters married off so that she could just paint. It's that craving of peace that she mentioned earlier when she was talking about her own darkness. Also, I love this moment because when she falls in love with Rhys at Starfall, that moment, Rhys is literally looking up at the stars and wishing. He's wishing that he could take back their kiss under the mountain. It is just like blatant neon sign that this is him. This is the person she's cheering to. But Rhys responds to this cheers and peace offering with, quote, "To the stars who listen and the dreams that are answered." One of the reasons this book, and specifically The Court of Dreams, is so impactful to us readers is because this book reminds us that the darkness inside us does not negate our dreams. If anything, like Lexi said last episode, many of us are who we are because of those hard chapters in our lives, and because they've left some darkness inside of us. We are not perfect people, just like the Inner Circle is definitely not perfect. But like them, with family found or blood, and with a dream, we can truly make anything happen. We all have dreams that are worth being answered, and we all just have to have the courage to look up at the stars and wish.
Well, I'm tearing up now, Nicole. That was so beautifully said. Oh my goodness.
You're the person who makes me realize I can live my dream.
Oh my gosh. You're just making me cry all over.
Let me twist the knife for you, big sis.
And that is why this book is so much more than stupid fairy smut.
Yes.
All right. Whew. With tears still in my eyes, let's keep going. Over the next few days, Fae-vorite the Bloodhound is dedicated to the mission of sniffing out this book, aka scouring the city while looking interested in what it has to offer, but not too eager, trying to feel its presence.
All the while, Rhys and Amren are having meeting after meeting that Fae-vorite is not invited to, which, side note, Amren and Rhys are orchestrating so that Fae-vorite is not invited to these meetings. What do you think the excuse was? That they were like, don't worry about it, Fae-vorite's not invited.
That's a good question. Initially, I was going to say, well, they're pretending that she's Rhys's pet, but then I remembered that he stated she is a member of his inner circle and emissary to the mortal realm. So that's him saying she has political say. Maybe they were able to come up with the excuse that she's never been to the summer court and should be exploring instead. Remember, she is still very new to Prythian, very new to being a high fae. So this could be their way of saying, hey, let her see around the place. Let her explore. Let her see what the high fae and specifically the summer court here have to offer. And Tarquin, who wants her to be emissary to the summer court within her role here in the night court, agrees because he wants her to see his people, his culture, and his city for herself. That's the only answer I can come up with. That's
better than what I came up with, which was nothing. So awesome.
We see how far Feyre truly has come on this healing journey. While she explores the city, she sees its citizens, their scars and missing limbs that show the devastation Amarantha caused. But she also sees the light gleaming in their eyes and recognizes, quote, I had saved them too. Yes, she follows up that she has done a terrible thing to save them, but she had saved them. This is truly the first time Feyre acknowledges the good that came out of her sacrifice and why she killed those innocent fairies. She did a terrible thing for the greater good, and here she is seeing that greater good on display literally right before her eyes. Back in the Spring Court, she was so shielded. When she tried to help the High Fae's village's rebuilding efforts, she was turned away. And also, I can't help but say that the Spring Court had it better than most other people in Prythian. The Summer Court suffered for 5 decades, and you can tell by just walking around the city. Not just in the destruction of Adriata itself, but in its people. And yet, here they are with hope again, looking forward to the future that they now have, all because of Feyre. She needed this reassurance. She needed to see for herself the good that has come out of such a terrible thing. Life is all around her, hard-earned and hopeful for a better future. Just like how she is starting to feel herself and feeling that spark of life come back because it is so hard earned and she needs to find that hope for a better future. And with these realizations, she, quote, did not feel quite so heavy. I'm so happy for her as we experience this healing journey alongside her.
This is also Feyre giving herself credit for the role that she played in literally freeing thousands, if not possibly hundreds of thousands of people. While I wouldn't go as far as saying that she feels proud of herself right now, she is finally realizing and recognizing her monumental role, which is huge for Feyre.
Yes, exactly. And then after the 3rd day of exploring Adriata, Feyre is walking up the steps toward their rooms and stops to lean into a little night breeze, which again, I love this pull toward the night and what it has to offer against these eternally warm seasons.
On her way up to the palace, she notices 2 things, one of which being Amren and Varian. Let's talk about it. Amren is cleaning her nails on a balcony, and Varian is a few stories up watching her, looking like he's wondering if he can clear the distance to, get her. Feyre compares Amren to a cat playing with a dog, but she wonders if that's why Varian hounds her day and night. Love that comparison to Varian being a dog and then saying that he hounds her, like SJM, writing queen. It's so good.
I love it. I love it so much.
Especially given that later, after the blood rubies and the necklace are given to Amren, and she's like, I guess I won't sack Adriata, she says how Varian hasn't decided if he hates her or if he wants her. This is only the start of this, like I said earlier, subplot G-level romance storyline. But to be honest, I want to know more about it so I can connect to it more, because it does feel very surface level right now of how they got together. But what took Varian from literally hating her to wanting her?
Well, see, I don't know if he ever hated her, but rather he's intrigued by her and sees her as a threat because it's freaking Amren. Of course she's a threat. And it all just rolls up into him wanting her. I don't think that this is the first time that they have met either. Obviously, Amren has been to the Summer Court previously. She knew the previous High Lord, Cressida. We can gather they all have some familiarity with each other. Not a lot, but they know each other at least to some degree. Yeah. And so I'm willing to bet that this is not completely new for the 2 of them either. So that's just my headcanon there.
I didn't think about it that way, but that does make a lot of sense. I do want to put another side note on this, though, that Varian keeps Amren entertained. He keeps up with Amren. I bet you anything homeboy is freaky. He has to be in order to keep Amren coming back
satisfied
for more.
I agree with you 1,000,000%. Yes, absolutely. The second and probably slightly more important thing that Feyre notices is a small building on the bit of land that had been revealed near the tidal causeway. She wouldn't have been able to see this small building most of the time since she had never been up this high in the day when the tide was out. During the rest of the day when the tide is in, this building would have been completely submerged in water. And it feels like a little piece of home, quote, wet and miserable looking as it was. Feyre is drawn to it like she wants to run toward it. I just love this writing so much. And while she doesn't know for certain, she is 99.9% sure that this is where the book must be because of that pull she feels, that familiarity of it being like home to her, as it would be for Tarquin, whose power is directly tied to this half of the Book of Breathings. Quote, I wish I didn't, but I realized I already had a plan for that too. We're reminded of that guilt she feels in pursuing this mission at any cost. But hey, our girl is also cunning and clever, willing to do what it takes, even if she feels bad about it, and recognizes that in herself where it's like, oh, I wish I did not think this way, but well, I do. So here we go.
We're back in another dining room, which we have been in a different dining room every dining room scene in this stretch of chapters.
Only you would notice that, Nicole. I love it so much.
Well, this dining room has some special meaning. It is the family dining room, showing our crew just how much Tarquin wants this alliance to work. And just to really twist the knife for Feyre Darling, given that they're about to steal from him, and she's also about to infiltrate the High Lord's mind, which... let's get into it. Feyre is making plans with Tarquin to tour the city tomorrow, and our sly Feyre Fox mentions how there's that little interesting building down on the causeway that I would love to go see. I mean, this is pretty brilliant from Feyre's point of view, because their reaction to the statement will make or break their confirmation. Turns out it does make it, because Tarquin and Cressida glance at each other, totally showing their hand. Again, we are reminded that Tarquin was not raised to be a High Lord, and we can gather Cressida probably wasn't raised to be this high of power. I don't know. She's a princess, so maybe she was. He didn't learn politics or face masking or whatever. And this golden retriever good boy is on full display here.
But then he jumps right back into putting the mask on, answering blandly that it's a temple ruin, quote, the lies smooth as silk.
While Feyre, her Slytherin is really coming out to play here, she directs the conversation towards how maybe we shouldn't go to that temple ruin that Tarquin says is mud and seaweed and all that kind of stuff, because she's had enough mud for a while. She's directing his thoughts to Under the Mountain. Earlier on the pleasure barge, he mentioned how he's known she's a pearl since he saw her throw that bone at Amarantha like a javelin during the first task. And here she is directing him to think about it. She's here saying, don't think about us betraying you. She's saying, think about a moment I saved you, your entire court, all of Prithian, my guy. And think about how I am a good person in your eyes. It is brilliant. She is a fast learner. I got to give her that.
But alas, the damage is done, and Tarquin is on high alert with his stare that lasts a moment too long.
So Feyre, holding that stare a moment too long, hurls herself towards his mind. Quote, there was a shield in place, a shield of sea glass and coral and the undiluting sea. To get past this particular shield, Feyre becomes that sea, moving with the waves, and then becomes Tarquin's mental shield altogether.
I love how his shield is described. Everyone's mental shield is a reflection of them. And of course, being the embodiment of summer and ocean, Tarquin's shield is made up of that essence.
And homegirl is through.
Now, we have to wonder, is she just that powerful or that fast of a learner as a Damati, like Rhys will note? Or is the strategy of breaking through Tarquin's shield innately that easy for her to come up with because she has a piece of him, his power within her? I'm willing to bet it's both. Yes, it was easier for her to do this with Tarquin. It was also easy for her to do this with Lucien, but she didn't have to get past a shield, if I remember correctly, like she does with Tarquin, which is a concern on Lucien's part, but that is a story for another day. But I do think that she had the cunning and strategic mindset to come up with the idea of how to do this, which was also influenced by that little piece of Tarquin. It helped forge the idea, like very subconsciously, it helped her understand what she had to do in order to do this, which of course goes into both the why she came up with this and then the how is because of course she has that piece of Tarquin within her, if that any of that just made sense.
It did. Feyre notes his thoughts of worry, wondering why she asked about the temple and why they came here at all. And Feyre, soothing like the waves, washes her thoughts over Tarquin's, calming them as if she was calming a storm in the middle of the sea, reminding him in his own voice that she is harmless, she is his friend, and Amarantha did not break the kindness he sees within her, calling back to the moment of him mentioning how he sees that kindness in her on their treasure trove date. And just like that, Feyre arrives back in her own body, her work done while Rhys calmed down the thoughts of Varian and Cressida in the background. Absolutely necessary in the moment, this choice that Feyre made to break into Tarquin's mind and manipulate him really doesn't sit well with her.
Well, and I'll just be blunt, it shouldn't. She did what she had to do, which had been the mindset of this entire summer court trip. But this is more than lying and deceiving. This is manipulating Tarquin's mind, controlling him with her powers. And Feyre made it happen rather easily, unwilling to let herself question what she was doing in the moment because, again, she needed to do it for the greater good. I wholeheartedly agree, and I would have done the same thing. But again, it's a good thing that she doesn't feel good about this.
Well, later that night, Rhys comes into her room to talk about the plan on how to get the book. And Feyre's unease on her actions naturally come up. We've talked about it a lot on the podcast of how we love our morally gray men and their actions and their, thought processes and stuff. But we've never taken a moment to define morally gray so that we're all on an even playing field. Morally gray means a character that has no motivation to do only good or only bad actions. Instead, a morally gray character will choose to act in alignment with their own ambition and current goal. In terms of our ACOTAR morally gray characters, I believe that they are on the good side of morally gray. Their goals are to save all of Prythian and to break down class prejudice. It's to save as many lives as possible. That's good in moral standards. However, like we see with the Night Court, that while their goals are morally good, the ways they act in order to achieve said goals might not be considered good at all times. And Rhys tells Feyre here, quote, "Tonight, the benefits outweighed the costs."
He notes that if she hadn't entered Tarquin's mind and shifted his thoughts, odds are they'd be, quote, knee-deep in shit right now. But I like how our morally gray Rhys talks her through this, that it shouldn't feel right, even if you do get used to the sense that you're crossing a boundary. There is a very fine line between getting used to this feeling and losing this feeling altogether, like many Damati do. Just because you can go into people's minds doesn't make you innately entitled to it, as Rhys kind of has to explain for his own reasoning for checking in on Feyre during those months of being in the spring court.
Feyre is stepping into her own morally gray nature. Previously, she's always been acting in benefit of her family, keeping the promise to her mother, then obviously for the greater good of Prythian, but she was always fighting against an evil at the time, whether the evil was poverty and starvation or Amarantha, which capital E evil. Here, Tarquin is not evil in the slightest. In fact, he is the most golden retriever of the High Lords. He is a good boy. And she is having to grapple with this.
He's a good boy.
He's a good boy. He's a treat, Tarquin. And she is having to grapple with this new morally gray side of her, priming us for the Feyre who will walk into the spring court and destroy it from the inside out.
Yes, but I will argue that is revenge, Feyre. This is do what you must. Do what must be done, Feyre. But to your point, it's showing what she's capable of, her own morally gray self, and how she is holding on to those morally good attributes while taking objectively evil, I don't want to say evil, but objectively bad action. While in the spring court, that is her just being a straight up Slytherin. I will say this, Daniel, who was on our bonus episode, really convinced me not to be so angry at her about what happens. I'll just leave it at that.
I can't
but I
wait
still
to
have some interesting feelings about all of that.
Amren enters and our crew concocts a plan. And by our crew, I mean Feyre, because she is the one who voices the plan of stealing the book.
Rhys may get the plan in motion, outlining that it's likely warded against winnowing and they need to go in at night the old-fashioned way. But Feyre recognizes her usefulness and how she's the only hope they have of unlocking access to this book, which, yes, launches her right into planning mode.
Tonight, they will spy on the guards and the rotations and note where their watch posts are and all that kind of stuff, all during low tide. Then tomorrow night, they will sneak out, steal the book, and be right back in the night court before the sun comes up. It is notable
Easy peasy.
Easy, no problem. we'll see. It's notable that Feyre comes up with this plan. Again, she's stepping into that calculating mind, yes. But as Reese notes, she's thinking like an Illyrian. Another hint for us readers that she belongs with this family in the inner circle. But I also bet you anything, Reese is also thinking, this woman thinks like a high lady. Like, absolutely.
All right, friends, it is the day before the heist, and it is painfully slow, filled with anticipation. Feyre thinks to herself, quote, liar, thief, deceiver, that's what they'd call me soon. Deceiver we most often associate with Amarantha, and earlier in this book, Feyre was thinking the word liar and didn't know if she was talking about Amarantha or herself as she was tortured in her dreams. Throughout the book, Feyre refers to herself as many different titles: liar, manipulator, murderer, monster. It isn't until they're given the second half of the Book of Breathings will these titles move into princess, aka the Princess of Carrion, and then, of course, leading us to High Lady at the end. Also, it's a really fun nod to the 3 parts of ACOWAR, which are each a title Feyre associates with. Princess of Carrion, something the second half of the Book of Breathings will call her. Cursebreaker, what this first half of the Book of Breathings will call her. And, of course, High Lady, her chosen title.
Crew tells the summer court that they will be leaving tomorrow afternoon. However, they plan to be off and out before the court will even wake up, leaving a note saying they have urgent business in the night court. What's heartbreaking is that as they leave, Tarquin kisses her on the cheek, telling her that he wishes this wasn't their last night and that he would probably visit the night court soon. He's completely fallen for Feyre's charm. And this is like the equivalent of a high school crush saying to you that like, oh, I'll come visit you in college. And you're like, no, please don't.
All she can do is hope that he'll eventually understand that they're stealing from them for, quote, for their sake. Feyre even acknowledges the supreme arrogance of this, but it's true. They can't risk unsuccessfully trying to convince the summer court to give them this half of the Book of Breathings when the fate of the entire world is on the line, including the world that Tarquin envisions. Again, showing her own morally gray inner thoughts. At least she is aware of this line of thinking and feels terrible, almost falling to her knees to beg for his forgiveness. But at the end of the day, literally, she knows she needs to keep pushing forward with the task at hand.
Our crew is about to start their heist, and they need to be on their A game. And I know while we're not getting a book from the summer court, Lexi and I absolutely need to be on our A game for Fantasy Fangirls. Enter AG1. I first gave AG1 a try because come 3 p.m., I would be inefficient is the nicest way I can put it. I would feel sluggish. I could barely focus during the day. But since drinking AG1, I can feel a huge difference in my daily energy. Come 3 p.m., I'm focused. I could basically join Feyre on this mission. I'd be so helpful. I'd be great on a heist.
That's because AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that supports your body's universal needs like gut optimization, stress management, and immune system. Since 2010, AG1 has led the future of foundational nutrition, continuously refining their formula to create a smarter, better way to elevate your baseline health.
I love that every scoop also includes prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for my gut support. And guess what? Even our parents have started drinking AG1, and they always tell me that they feel like they're getting the nutrients their body craves.
If there is one product I had to recommend to elevate your health, it is AG1. And that's why we're so excited that AG1 is sponsoring today's episode. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs. Nicole and I absolutely need those for all of these events we're going on with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/FFG. That's drinkag1.com/FFG. Check it out.
Let's steal a book. In the dead of night, Reese begins flying in Amren and Feyre during the low tide, so the building is on full display. Reese drops them off. It's like school drop off. Literally, Reese is like, go have fun at preschool, friends. And he begins his patrol duty.
It's important to note that he and Amren check for words for around the site and find none, which... yay! We'll learn soon enough how very wrong they are, and we can guess that the power of this book works differently, nullifying how their powers register wards, or the wards are indeed a very unique, unrecognizable magic. They are playing with powers here that they cannot even fathom, really.
Using Feyre's High Lord tracking ability, she and Amren quickly learn that this book is not in a little room in the temple, but instead it is in the dead center of the chamber, but below. Side note, Feyre would make the best metal detector at the beach, absolutely. The floor just happens to be in knee-deep muck, seaweed, and barnacles. Yummy. Digging through the grossness and crabs now entering the picture, they finally encounter a lead door. Quote, lead, to keep its full force in to preserve it. They used to line the sarcophagi of the great rulers with it because they thought they'd one day awaken. I love that Amren is like, here's a little quick history lesson, but whoa, great rulers? I'm assuming she means a Daglin.
That was my first thought, though it also depends on who they is that Amren is talking about, because I assume they means Fae, or more specifically, the ancient High Lords who are the ones in charge of creating such lead sarcophagi, which, considering the Daglin ruled over them, it would make sense. However, the Fae themselves wouldn't want to preserve the Daglin's power in hopes that they would someday awaken, because they were their overlords and the Fae wanted to be free of them. But the Daglin probably made the Fae create these sarcophagi. In any case, we understand lead is a material that helps keep this power's full force within it to preserve it, which is exactly what the Summer Court would want to do when hiding this book.
I do want to add in a quick metal watch, because in mythology, lead symbolizes heavy density and impurity. But in the Bible, lead symbolizes the lowest kind of evil, which checks out with what we're working with.
Let's remember that the book was placed here 500 years ago, which subjectively isn't that long ago for Prythian. It's technically still this generation, considering how many of our main characters were alive 500 years ago. But for how old this temple is, I'm guessing it has been around much longer than 500 years. And this served as a perfect hiding place that was already there to protect the book once it came into the Summer Court's possession.
Amren says she wonders why, of all the courts, the book was given to the Summer Court of all places. And it's a damn good question. Maybe not for during a heist, but just in general, it is a good question. I wonder if it's because they're neutral. That's the only reason I can think of.
Good point. And I'll also say they're not the only neutral court, though.
Yeah.
Can we assume Tarquin's predecessor was the one who was given this book? And if he helped organize a rebellion, perhaps he was granted this book because he was very much against Hybern and what they stood for, and he was neutral within Prythian. Although the same argument could be said for day and winter courts. So I have no idea. The answer might just be SJM wanted to take us to the Summer Court, so that's who got the book.
Sold! I love it. But then Fae-vorite does something that truly blows my mind, and I'm not going to lie. I didn't know she did this until far more rereads than I would like to admit.
It's so crazy, and we readers really do tend to overlook how Fae-vorite literally shifts into Tarquin. So, let me repeat that. She shifts into Tarquin. So I'm just quoting the whole damn thing here. Quote, I became every smile he'd given me, became the crystalline blue of his eyes, the brown of his skin. I felt my own skin shift, felt my bones stretch and change until I was him, and it was a set of male hands I now possessed, now pushed against the door, until the essence of me became what I had tasted in that inner mental shield of his, sea and sun and brine.
Earlier in the bath, Feyre mentions how shapeshifting is one of the powers she doesn't really want to touch, at least not for a while, because it is Tamlin's power. Well, it looks like a while came a lot sooner than we thought. The fact that Tamlin doesn't use this power on the reg is astounding to me. But I do have a question. I have a question and a theory. Feyre, we assume, is more powerful than Tamlin. We know that he is powerful, yes, but he may not have this extra level of powerful when it comes to shapeshifting. Or does he always just go into that form because he's so used to Banbear Pig, which Tamlin sticking to something out of comfort, that's not out of question for him and his character.
I think that he does have this ability and this power, but I also have to wonder, does he even know that he does? Or maybe he's too much of a goody two-shoes to use this strength of his power. But wow, This won't be the last time Feyre uses this shape-shifting ability to literally shift into someone else, but I cannot emphasize this enough. She shifts into Tarquin. That is insane power. That's not glamour like what the other High Lords or Amarantha are able to do. Does the Lock's power hesitate, sensing that it's not 100% truly Tarquin? Yes, but I will say that speaks more to the power of the book versus her own power of being Tarquin. I am flabbergasted that we as a fandom do not discuss this power of Feyre's more often. So you bet your booty I'm going to keep bringing it up and remind you all of it.
Shifting back into her own skin, though, these two females look down to see a staircase with tendrils of power rising up. Even Amren's face pales and, quote, "I never saw the cauldron," she said, "but it must be terrible indeed if even a grain of its power feels like this." Amren is unnerved. This is a neon sign to us readers that, whoop, shit's about to get real.
And remember, this book was created with the last of the molten ore used to create the cauldron. And among other things, it can be used to nullify the cauldron's power. So this book is, in so many ways, made up of the same source as the cauldron, illustrating just how much power the cauldron and therefore this book holds.
So down on the staircase they go, where they meet up with putrid water. It's described as oily, gag. Even though this place fills up swiftly with water thanks to the drainage holes in the walls, who knows how long this water has just been standing here since no one else has been opening these doors in 500 years, which is just gross. It's just gross. Wading down a hall with waist-deep freezing water, it's also chest height for Amren, poor little short Amren, they come up against another lead door, which power coils behind it. And as Feyre places her palm on the door, the draining of her power is so much worse this time around. But she does not transform to Tarquin, assuming it's because the tendrils of his power, like that fingerprint that Reese mentioned a few episodes ago, was just enough to make this door go open. That's the only way I can describe it.
I guess I think it's like the first lock is like the 5 locks on it, and then the second one only has like 2 or 3. That's the equivalent that I think of here, but I have no idea.
I'll take it. I'll take that. The door swings open and the oily water does not enter into this new chamber, but instead is halted by an invisible threshold. Gotta keep that book dry.
Which makes sense. Why keep a book underwater if there aren't precautions to keep it dry? Now, of course, this book is very unique and isn't even paper, but that's beside the point. Amren waves a hand over the air where the water just stopped, checking it for wards, which, again, there are none, except, yes, there absolutely are. At least I assume so. And they are sounding off the alarms in the summer court, with Reese going around having to deal with the guards. But again, goes to show how unknown this magic is to them, where that doesn't even cross their radar.
It's interesting. I didn't think that the alarms went off until after the book went, liar, and then all the doors slammed shut. That's when I thought the alarms went off.
That is definitely possible too. I guess I just assume that there are indeed a lot of words around it, and it's just a very unique kind of power, or the power of the book is nullifying Amren's ability to check them properly.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Entering this dry chamber on a round dais lays half of the Book of Breathings. It's about the size of an ordinary book, but it's made of lead yet again. But the book inside this box begins whispering to Feyre, quote, "Who are you? What are you? Come closer. Let me smell you. Let me see you." Ooh, creepy. This is not the first time something has said, quote, "What are you?" to Feyre. The Weaver asked, "What are you?" both in ACOMAF, as we saw a few episodes ago, and it will in ACOWAR when we get another run-in with the Weaver. But before Feyre even so much as picks up the box, the tide starts to come back in. It's early. Quote, "Perhaps the sea knows. Perhaps the sea is the High Lord's servant." I love magic. I love it.
I love it so much. Oh my gosh. This is why the rest of the series, in my opinion, is so much better than ACOTAR, because we get so much more magic and our characters really interacting with it.
Yes, agreed. Feyre tells the box, "I am Tarquin," over and over again. And finally, she's like, "We gotta go." So she snatches it up, and an ancient, cruel voice hisses, "Liar!" And all hell breaks loose.
Again, this book is so powerful, it recognizes, despite Feyre's best efforts, that she is not Tarquin, although she doesn't actually turn into Tarquin, but she still is giving like the mental, "I am Tarquin." But hey, the book cannot be fooled like the locks could be.
The door slams shut, and the sounds of water filling the previous chamber comes through the lead door. Amren appears to be heating the metal on the door with swirls and whirls on it, quote, as if it were a language all her own. Yes, we will be talking about it in Maasverse Madness, don't worry. But also, I love that it appears to be burning. This is a fun nod to Amren having some kind of intense fire magic as, for instance, a seraphim angel, which you can listen to episode 3 for the full download of that theory. And it works. The door bursts open only for a wave of water so intense to sweep Fae-vorite towards the back of the room. But unlike the moments where the Weaver and the Adder were so intense where Fae-vorite just forgot all of her powers, Fae-vorite right now is calling on that new Fae strength, and she pushes through the current towards Amren, who is holding her arm out, not to help Fae-vorite through the door, but instead to keep the door against the wall.
Fae-vorite is also leveraging her water powers, where the water around them calms just a little, though she isn't trained or even maybe powerful enough with her water bending to match the strength of this water and fully get them out of this deadly situation. Like, it is way too much, too fast. There is no way that she can possibly go up against this really powerful water.
When these two are finally through the door, Amren releases and the door violently slams back shut. This is showing just how much power Amren is using to hold it open for Fae-vorite. We will later learn that Amren's power almost got nullified down here from this book. So just to be clear, her holding a door open that is so powerful, it literally like shaboom slams shut, is her almost nullified. That's badass. Like, that is so cool. I love that for Amren. These ladies make their way up the stairs with Amren on Fae-vorite's shoulders, but the water is pouring and cascading down on them. And Amren creates not a clear path, but a break in the current, to which Fae-vorite then calms the water, like Lexi was saying, using Tarquin's power. SJM, who grew up Jewish and minored in religious studies, has been known to make many religious parallels in her stories. And here's another. Huge shout out to our Discord moderator, Spiral, for their help on this section and for pulling out all the religious crossovers. The parting of the sea/waters occurs 5 times in the Bible, always happening with people who have been blessed or chosen by God or a higher power, which totally checks out for our 2 made females here. Just as these two get towards the top of the stairs, they have just enough time to take a huge gulp of air before the door also slams shut to the outside.
It cannot be understated just how close to death this duo is. With the way out closed and the water completely filling the chamber, they have no way to breathe, and all they can do is claw at the closed lead door, which only moments before had opened to Fae-vorite/Tarquin's touch. Even Amren's symbol magic does nothing to budge the door.
Fae-vorite shifts into talons. Again, it's talons, which are associated with Reese rather than claws associated with Tamlin. There's our quick talon watch. She's punching at the metal, and just when Fae-vorite, desperate to breathe, is realizing she's about to drown, she thinks of even attempting to take her final breath, the door is ripped away and spindly web hands grab a hold of her and Amren. They're saved!
They're saved by 3 water wraiths. I love how Fae-vorite describes their faces as beautiful, when in truth, that's the last way you'd usually describe them. But she is so thankful for them to come to the rescue that of course she sees their faces as beautiful in this moment. Recall at the Spring Court Tithe when Fae-vorite helped the poor water wraith who was unable to pay her taxes, giving her jewelry. And that water wraith said she would not forget this kindness.
I guess the water wraith telephone really works well because these sisters are here in the summer court and they knew of Fae-vorite's kindness in the spring court and literally saved her life as a result. Good job, telephone. We love it.
Above the surface in the ocean, Fae-vorite and Amren are vomiting the ocean water they had eventually breathed in, and they're gasping for air in the dawn light. After the water wraiths say that their sister's debt is repaid, again, great communication with each other across courts, water wraiths, our 2 females swim to the mainland shore. Heist over, they did it. And after any heist where you almost drown in the ocean, you know what needs to happen. Laundry. And hey, I have 2 young kids and I have super sensitive skin, so I'm extra mindful about the kind of laundry our household uses, which is why I love using Earth Breeze for my family. Earth Breeze is the right choice for sensitive skin, full stop, and I do not say that lightly. Their eco sheets are dermatologist tested, hypoallergenic, and free of bleach, dyes, and parabens. There's also a fragrance-free option. That's our personal favorite. Earth Breeze got rid of unnecessary chemicals for a formula that is kind to sensitive skin of of all ages, including babies.
And I'm always looking for ways to make laundry time easier. Laundry is my least favorite chore, like we talked about on last episode. Earthbreeze Eco Sheets look just like dryer sheets, but it's ultra concentrated, liquidless laundry detergent. Amazing, right? It's the best of all worlds. Earthbreeze is tough on stains and odors while being kind to the planet and your skin. No more heavy lifting or measuring sticky blue goo from massive plastic jugs.
My other favorite thing about Earthbreeze is how they help you minimize your household's impact on the environment. These tiny sheets can stop millions of detergent jugs from entering our ecosystems. In fact, 500 million detergent jugs end up in landfills and oceans every single year. Making a positive impact in the world doesn't have to come at a cost to you. My clothes are clean, they smell great, our skin is great, and I feel like I actually did something good just by doing my laundry.
Give Earthbreeze a try right now. Our listeners are receiving 40% off Earthbreeze just by going to earthbreeze.com/FFG. That's earthbreeze.com/FFG to cut out single-use plastic in your laundry and claim 40% off your subscription. earthbreeze.com/FFG. Reese, again, being very on brand, gently kicks Feyre's calf and asks, "What the hell are you doing?" Immediately, I think of the "what the hell did you do?" right after Feyre leaves the Weaver. Reese, some dating advice, my guy. They clearly don't look like they're having a good time. Maybe try a different approach.
Well, I agree with you in this instance. Unlike last time, he has no idea how much danger they were both in and how close they were to death. But like I said, I do agree with you. So B's bad, Reese. B's bad.
But we realized the reason he wasn't there to help his mate in his second was because he did not feel any alarm through the bond.
He was really relying on their bond like in every other instance. And it didn't even cross his mind that the power was nullified. Also, Reese understandably really trusts Amren, which we see here as he says, quote, "I thought you had it covered." Again, knowing what they just went through, that's an ouch there. That's not the right thing to say, Rhysand.
About to winnow home, the sounds of people darting around rise up, and Rhys realizes he missed some guards. This is because he only relied on his Illyrian training and didn't tap into his Daemati powers. Think back to when he mentioned his mom wanting to have both skills at his disposal and didn't want him to only rely on his Night Court powers. Unfortunately, because he's been training so much as an Illyrian recently, that was his default, and he literally forgot that he had this other power at his disposal. Again, the similarities between Feyre and Rhys on full display. They arrive in the foyer of the townhouse covered in water and sand. And I just need a quick side note. I hate being covered in sand. I don't care if it's just like on my feet, in between my toes. If I am anywhere that is not a beach, and I mean like literally on the beach, if I'm anywhere that is not literally on the beach and I have sand on me, I am unhappy. I would have sprinted to the showers so fast in the townhome, it would not even have been funny. Luckily, Amren just snaps her fingers and they're instantly clean. But like what I would give to have that talent, that would have been amazing. Feyre, only looking at Amren, explains their rescuers. And Amren literally starts laughing out loud and she almost looks human. I love that little element to her.
Right? I love how she laughs, quote, "Only an immortal with a mortal heart would have given one of those horrible beasts the money." It reminds me of what Alice said to Feyre right after the tithe. And we have that callback again from the end of ACOTAR, when Rhys told Feyre to be grateful for her mortal heart. This uniquely sets her apart from other Fae. And hey, great example right here where it literally saved their lives.
Which Feyre follows suit and starts laughing as well. This is a huge moment for our girl Feyre. The last time she's laughed, at least on the page, was in the summer solstice last book. Can we just let that land for a second? It was hundreds of pages ago. Earlier, we got smiles from Feyre, but this is now going one step further. Yay, Feyre!
And how great is it that it's with Amren, of all people, that she's laughing with and sharing this moment with? She's starting to bond with each of the members of the Inner Circle. Obviously, we have Rhys, and she's had several moments with Mor. Then, of course, we have Cassian when they trained last episode, and Azriel when they flew to the mortal realm, and, of course, also while at Rita's. And now Amren, when they barely escaped death together and are now laughing hysterically about it. This is something I would do if I came that close to death, just laugh about it afterward like a completely crazy person, because the only alternative would be to curl up in a ball and cry.
I would do one or the other. There would be no in between, but really it'd be a toss-up.
No, if it was you and me together, we would definitely be laughing hysterically.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. We're not done because we have a box to open. The box calls Fae-vorite again a liar, but Fae-vorite says open. And this is my favorite. It goes, say please, which it's like, ahem. Manners, woman. I love it. But then it says, quote, like calls to like, unmade and made, made and unmade. That is the cycle. Like calls to like. Let's unpack this. First off, our like calls to like count is now at 3, getting 2 in just one quote. Love that. Secondly, the unmade and made, made and unmade. This cycle happens because Fae-vorite and her sisters become made and Amren becomes unmade. However, that does mean that the ratio is 3-1, which is ominous, but I don't think that has any consequences in our story. The last title that the book calls her before opening is Cursebreaker. This box is cold and cunning, where the second one, who calls her Princess of Carrion and a slew of other names, is pure chaos. But cutting aside, we got a book.
Quote, it had been formed of dark metal plates bound on 3 rings of gold, silver, and bronze, each word carved with painstaking precision in an alphabet I could not recognize. Ah, yes. It turns out those reading lessons were for naught after all, at least for this reason. But Amren is unnerved, hands shaking in her pockets and face draining of color. She says, quote, it is no language of this world. Yes, indeed. More on this in Maasverse Madness.
She goes on to share that it is called the Lashon HaKodesh, aka the Holy Tongue. Again, we're going to go back to SJM's Jewish roots. The Lashon HaKodesh, spelled the same, is Hebrew for the Holy Tongue, the same thing that Amren says here. This is a term attributed to the Hebrew language, or it can also be used as a mix of Hebrew and Aramaic. It is used for religious texts and prayers, and primarily was used in the medieval Hebrew era. The HaKodesh language, HaKodesh in Hebrew, means Holy Spirit. Reese mentions how he heard the Book of Breathings was written in a tongue of mighty beings who feared the Cauldron's power and made a book to combat it before leaving this world. That's pretty ominous. Not only is this some major Reese scheming, but this is also a huge clue for us readers. The Daglin are the ones who wrote the Book of Breathings language. Whoa!
Amren, I assume because she had been around during the time of the Daglin, who is also not of this world, is the only one who can decode this book.
Amren stares, quote, as if it were a ghost, as if it were a miracle. This right here. Because Reese isn't done. Quote, I thought, too, that the book might also contain a spell to set you free and send you home, if they were the ones who wrote it in the first place. Whoa! Big alarm. First and foremost, how the hell did Reese know that the Daglin wrote this? Like, how?
Yeah, probably because he's aware that they made the book, so that would have to be the same their language. But also, like he says, it was a complete gamble that Amren would be able to read this.
And this will indeed free Amren when she has both of the halves of the Book of Breathings. In ACOTAR, we learn that there is an unbinding spell with the help from the Suriel, and Amren will indeed crack said code, winning the entire war, mostly.
Well, I don't want to get too much into the Silver Flames, Reese not telling Fae-vorite about the pregnancy plot yet. I do want to point out instances like this, where he didn't previously tell Amren, his second, about his suspicions that it can free her, and his reasoning was that he didn't want to get her hopes up. Reese doesn't tell people very close to him. Again, she is his second. She's extremely powerful. They have real, true trust in one another. He does not tell her or others important information because he wants to have all the information before involving them. I get that this is not nearly on the same level as not telling his mate she will die in childbirth, but it does really show that this is part of his character and something we can expect from him. Just needed to say that. The idea of Amren being set free holds so much weight. How often do we hear her say thank you in this series? I honestly don't know. I didn't count, but not that many times, folks. Fae-vorite thinks to herself, quote, 10,000 years in exile alone. I will just say this, according to my timeline, it was more than 15,000 years, but anyway,
I think you're right, actually.
I think I'm right too, but
not to be like, Lexi's right and SJM's wrong.
I worked very hard on figuring that out.
Enough about cauldrons and freedom. Let's talk about Jurian, aka the piece that doesn't fit. Why would the king want Jurian? And what would the king have to make Jurian loyal to Hybern? We will learn that Jurian is indeed searching something in the cauldron's pool of the dead, aka Miriam, and finds nothing, which to him is, oh, she's still alive. So Asriel/Rhys's suspicions here are quite correct, and that's what he wants from Hybern. But Jurian also has other motives, and that is spying on the king of Hybern, which that timeline I'm going to need some more dissection on, because that is the whole question mark for me.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about all of that as well, but we're not there yet. But I do want to talk about something here real quickly. Who is Miriam and this individual Draken that Jurian would want revenge on for winning her heart? I'm going to go into the details later. That is definitely a Suriel segment for Back of War, at least. Now is not the time. But here is a super quick download. 500 years ago, Miriam was a half-human and was a healer and Jurian's lover during the war. She also became friends with Mor. Draken was a Fae prince and ally to the humans. After he got injured during the war, Miriam healed him. Allegedly under Miriam's encouragement, Jurian started up a relationship with Clythia, Amarantha's sister, remember that whole thing, to get information for the human side. But then Miriam ended her relationship with Jurian and fell in love with Draken, who was already in love with her. Miriam and Draken turned out to be mates, and they got married the same night Jurian killed Clythia. Miriam got captured by Amarantha, then was freed by Rhys, who got captured in the process. Fast forward to the end of the war, when Miriam got fatally wounded by the Queen of the Blackland, which is on the continent, while she was getting freed humans out of the desert. Draken used an object made by the Cauldron to resurrect her, granting her a Fae's long life. Nowadays, Drake and Miriam and their people are hidden in Cretea, where no outsiders can find them, which accidentally includes friends like the Inner Circle. They're not able to find them. So all of this to say, Jurian is supposedly still mad and wants revenge against Miriam and Draken for her ending things with him. That's quite the reason to resurrect her and all of that, but I guess, you really can't forgive a girl, huh?
He's also been trapped in a ring for like 500 years, so I think he's
need some therapy.
I think he's a little unhinged.
We'll talk a lot more about this subplot and Miriam and Draken and Jurian later on, because we do understand that it is a little bit confusing. But I just wanted to outline all of that so we're all at least on the same page when we are discussing these characters.
This stretch is tied up in a nice little bow as Feyre says into Rhys's mind, quote, "to the dreams that are answered," calling back to this line in their conversation over clinking glasses in the summer court. But Rhys says back into Feyre's mind, quote, this is my favorite, "to the huntress who remembered to reach back to those less fortunate, and to water wraiths who swim very, very fast." Happy vacation, everybody. We did it.
While we've already highlighted key foreshadowing moments, let's turn our full focus onto foreshadowing for the rest of this book and other important moments in the series. Feyre wonders who Amren will eat while in Adriata. Quote, "Varian seemed like a good guess." Eat him she will. Speaking of Varian, Rhys tells Feyre that he could live without Varian, but if he was in the Night Court, he'd be buddies with Cassian and Asriel, or have Amren wrapped around her finger. While I would love some Cassian, Asriel, and Varian scenes, he is definitely wrapped around Amren's finger. Like, big time. In that same scene, Rhys tells Feyre, quote, "I want you to find a way to do what you have to do without making enemies of them." Oopsie daisy.
Feyre says in regards to Tamlin getting her back with war, and she says, "pain and killing wouldn't win me." This right here is one of the reasons why she is so angered by Rhys tormenting Keir in the Court of Nightmares. We also hear Feyre talk about the servants in the Summer Court and how they are not seen and not heard. Call to Alice's cousin who works here in the Summer Court and how they hear plenty just when no one believes they're present. And this cousin will tell Alice that Feyre visited and looked so happy and so healthy.
During the days that Feyre is searching for the book, she makes sure to, quote, "look a bit bored and aimless." This reminds me of her acting skills on full display in the opening chapters of ACOWAR when she's back in the Spring Court. This is her first taste of practicing how to act aimless and innocent. And hey, apparently she's good at it.
When Rhys and Feyre are having the morally gray conversation, and Rhys mentions how he checked in on Feyre when she was in the Spring Court, they are interrupted by Amren coming in, and Rhys says, quote, "I'll explain the rest some other time." How does chapter 54 sound, my guy? And last but not least, Feyre thinks that, quote, "The book might indeed be more than the key to our own salvation. This book will not only win the war, it'll also destroy the Cauldron and unbind Amren in the most epic way. But that's just to name a few. Now it is time to sip some tea with the Suriel. Every episode, Lexi is going to take a moment, have a little tea party with the Suriel, and walk us through a world-building topic that helps us better understand this world of Prythian and the people in it.
Today's Suriel topic is the Summer Court, obviously. Let's go through everything we know about the Summer Court, which I'm pleased to say is actually quite a lot. So grab your beach towel and don't forget that sunscreen, and we'll learn about this delightfully sunny and beautiful court. Let's start with the basics. The Summer Court is one of the 4 seasonal courts out of the 7 total courts in Prythian. It is in the southern part of Prythian, located northwest of the Spring Court, and its eastern neighbor is the Autumn Court. Northern border is Winter Court. It is one of the smaller courts of Prythian, like the Autumn Court. It is also important to note that this means the western border of the Summer Court is the sea that divides Prythian and the large island of Hybern. So the Summer Court's sea border is closest to Hybern, which will unfortunately have devastating consequences in ACOWAR. The Summer Court's insignia is an ocean wave, and I don't think I need to say this, but it is eternally summer here. The Summer Court's High Lord is Tarquin, who is the youngest High Lord at only 80 years old. We'll get more into how he became High Lord shortly, but let's talk a little bit about Tarquin. He is described as summer incarnate, and his unique power is waterbending. He may be young and inexperienced, but he is observant, gracious, kind, and protective of his people. But don't mistake that for him being a pushover. Before Amarantha took over and he became High Lord, Tarquin, along with Varian, led the previous High Lord's fleet. In the Summer Court, we also meet other nobility, including the High Lord's cousins, Prince and Princess of Adriata, Varian and Cressida. We don't know why they have the titles of Prince and Princess, and if this is specific to only the Summer Court, since we don't know of any other nobles with these titles in the other courts, only Hybern. But I'm assuming it means that they are top nobility and, of course, rulers of the capital Adriata. Before Amarantha took over Prythian 50 years ago, Tarquin's older cousin Nostris was High Lord. However, a decade after Amarantha's reign, so 40 years ago, Summer, Day, and Winter Court rebelled against her. They were quickly vanquished, and as punishment, Amarantha murdered these 3 courts' High Lords and their families. Tarquin was one of the only remaining relatives, and therefore, the Summer Court High Lordship passed down to him when he was only 40 years old. He had been a prince of another city and an admiral plus a sailor in the Summer Court previously. Speaking of Amarantha, soon after she took over, she raided the Summer Court and sacked all 4 of its cities almost immediately after her reign began. We learned that its citizens, or at least not all of them, were not under the mountain. Rather, they were tormented here in their city. At least we can speak about that about Adriata. Like I said, there are 4 main cities in the Summer Court, and we learn the most about Adriata in the series since that is where pretty much everything takes place in the Summer Court. Adriata is the capital and where the High Lord spends the last month of winter and first months of spring because it is the finest time to be there. I'll just say this, if it's eternally summer, I don't know how that makes a difference, but anyway. Adriata is a beautiful coastal city. Its palace is built atop a mountain island in the heart of a half-moon bay. The city circles the island on 3 sides and spreads toward the sparkling sea. This palace is crafted of shell-flecked walkways and walls with sea glass chandeliers, mother-of-pearl furniture, seashell pillars, and you can hear gurgling streams and fountains of fresh water. There are countless windows looking out to the bay, the mainland, and the open sea beyond. Imagine like a luxurious beach cottage, but make it a palace in a magical realm, and there you go. There you have the Adriata Palace. This palace, along with the entirety of Adriata, is undergoing repairs after Amarantha sacked it. But it's notable that Tarquin is focusing on repairing the city first before the rest of the palace, which the back half of the castle is still a wreck. That really does show how much of a people person Tarquin is. He wants to take care of his people before he takes care of his own palace entirely. The sea in the summer court is incredibly vibrant, and in the bay, if you're lucky enough, you can party on the High Lord's pleasure barge, which again is the equivalent to one of those multi-million-dollar yachts we all dream of going on. As a coastal city, naturally, the seafood is fresh, abundant, and superb. The summer court loves their treasures, like literal treasures. They are known for their skilled jewelers. The earliest High Lords valued this treasure dearly, and now the treasure is sacred more out of tradition. When their territory fell, Tarquin received word from Nostris, his predecessor, to hide the trove in the dead of night as fast as they could. And what troves they have! Lots and lots of jewels and pearls and uncut gems, more gold than you can imagine, suits of ornate armor, dresses woven of cobwebs and starlight, weapons of every sort, and many, many books. The summer court was also, for unknown reasons, chosen to be the Perithian court entrusted with the half of the Book of Breathings. The second half, remember, belongs with the mortal queens, protected by enchantments so it cannot be stolen or tricked away from them. Now let's talk about the people of the summer court. The high fae of the summer court, like their high lord, have dark skin, white or silver hair, and generally wear light, loose clothing that work well for the heat. We know of a few different species of fairies that come from the summer court. The Urisk, who are similarly built like the high fae, but distinctly have tree bark-like skin. This is Alish's species, and her family are from the summer court. Another type of fairy from the summer court have blue skin, soft like velvet, gangly limbs, pointed ears, long black hair, and sharp teeth. They look like a humanoid version of a butterfly and have black velvety wings. Additionally, there are fairies with scales and gills and long spindly webbed fingers. We also, of course, have water wraiths in the same family of those in the spring court, who dwell here in the summer court, luckily for Feyre and Amren. There is a clear division between the high fae and lesser fairies in the summer court, like other courts. Feyre observes that she only sees high fae around the palace, and it's because the lesser fairies aren't supposed to be seen. Tarquin wants to change this, though is keeping with tradition for now. And there you have it, friends. That is what we know about the summer court.
Now it is time to move into our favorite moments. Kick it off, Lex.
Everything about Varian and Amren, but I'll just pull out a few favorite moments. When they first arrive in Adriata and Varian is eyeing Amren as if he could be happy to kill her if given the chance. And as Feyre says, quote, in the brief time I'd known her, Amren had never looked more delighted. And my personal favorite, when Amren is like a cat playing with a dog. Another favorite moment is when I love how Cressida presumably cracks a crab claw with her hands, and then Rhys cracks a crab claw, say that 5 times fast, using his magic, notably without needing to use his hands. It seems like a flex of power, and you got to admire it.
From Feyre, quote, no one was my master, but I might be the master of everything if I wished, if I dared. This is such a forgotten line from the series, but it's giving me very like, I am the sky and all the storms that I've ever been. I am infinite vibes. I love lines like this.
It also reminds me of what Daniel said when he was a guest on our Maasverse bonus episode, how she has the capability of being like the Avatar. Can you tell I've been watching the Avatar The Last Airbender a lot lately? I've been making so many references to it. I love it so much. It's been a good rewatch.
Meanwhile, I'm like, give me all 4 episodes of the new season of Bridgerton in one night. Feyre tells Tarquin that she would fight for her sisters, but for the mortal realm as a whole, she wouldn't mind seeing their order be a little ruffled. This is some big Slytherin energy, and I'm not going to lie, I'm kind of here for it.
When Feyre is in her jealous stupor, she thinks about how she misses Valaris and what it was like to be part of a unit. Not only is this showing that Valaris is indeed starting to become her home, but it's also showing that she's beginning to see the inner circle as a family.
Feyre sees a necklace of rubies when touring with Tarquin and thinks that only a tremendous female could wear such a necklace. This is the same necklace that Varian will send Amren. It's just... Amren is such a badass, and I love how Varian's like, here's some jewelry. Here you go. And last but not least,
he speaks her language.
It's gift giving, I think. I think that's her. Actually, that is.
Hers is definitely gift giving. Oh my God.
In the Stars Who Listen scene, Feyre thinks to herself about the different people in the Court of Dreams. Quote, the bastard-born warriors, the Illyrian half-breed, the monster trapped in a beautiful body, the dreamer born into a court of nightmares, and the huntress with an artist's soul. Chills! Oh, it's so good. Again, this is going back to her seeing this little family as her family, even though she might not realize it yet. Friends, we are about to get into our Maasverse Madness section for the day. It's short. And thank God, because I'm about to lose my voice. Thank goodness.
It's so close to
It's like on its last legs. Today we are discussing Crescent City and Throne of Glass lore.
So if you've only read ACOTAR before you leave, next episode we will be covering chapters 38 through 43. And of course, if you want more Fantasy Fangirls, please do join the Patreon party. It is so helpful. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
Side note, yes, next episode is the throne scene, and I'm so excited. I cannot wait. You can also rate and review the podcast. This is one of the best things that you can do for any and all podcasts that you listen to, and it takes 2 seconds. And the most important thing, the cream of the crop, if you will, please share this episode with your fellow ACOTAR and ACOMAF friends.
All right, we are now entering our Maasverse Madness segment of the episode where we call out series crossover references and discuss theories. Today includes spoilers for both series, Crescent City and Throne of Glass. So if you have not finished those series, we will see you next week.
Lead being the tomb of the Asteri. We mentioned earlier this quote, lead to keep the full force in to preserve it. They used to line the sarcophagi of the great rulers with it because they thought one day they'd awaken. Immediately, if you're like me, you thought of the Asteri, who Bryce found in Crescent City at the bottom of the prison in Prithian. But alas, that tomb, I guess is a good word for it, was not made of lead. It was instead made of crystal. So I don't know if Amren's talking about a different great ruler, like Lexi mentioned earlier, or if this is just a forgotten lore point in the Maasverse, which honestly either is possible.
I was like, oh my gosh, I bet it was the Asteri, and I bet she was in a lead tomb. And then I went down to the Maasverse Madness and it was like, nope, you already looked up and it was crystal. And I was like, oh,
right? I was like,
I thought it was going to be a different answer.
I thought it was going to be the same thing, but alas, nope, it was crystal.
Here's just a tiny one. In one of the summer court troves, Feyre sees dresses woven of cobwebs and starlight leaned against one another. These dresses of cobwebs immediately made me think of spider silk in the Tog universe. I have no idea if that's right, but that's what it made me think of.
I was thinking the exact same thing, and that was my moment of, oh my god, I bet this is the spider silk, and I went down to the Maasverse Madness, and you had already put that in there, so I love it.
It's the same thing where we both literally wore Hawaiian shirts today without talking to each other about it.
I love it. Last but not least, the whorls on the door into the temple. On both of the doors into the chamber for the Book of Breathings, there are carved whorls along the door. Feyre activates both of the doors using her Tarquin fingerprint magic, but after the doors close and all hell breaks loose, Amren is the one who heats the metal and, quote, swirls and whirls, radiating out through it as if they were a language all her own. So, are these word marks? However, we also get another mystery language in this episode with the Book of Breathings that I was under the impression were word marks. However, we know these two symbolic languages are not the same because when Amren sees the symbols on the door, she's like unfazed, not surprised. But when she sees the language in the Book of Breathings, she goes wholly still at the Lashon HaKodesh, aka the Holy Tongue. This is also the same language that is tattooed on Bryce's back with "Through love, all is possible," which many people believed were word marks. However, none of that is confirmed canon. So which of these, the door and the Book of Breathings, which of these are word marks, if either of them even are? To answer this, I went to our Maasverse Madness Master List channel on our Discord. Yes, it exists, and it's probably one of my favorite channels on there. So huge shout out to the hive mind of people who helped me with this. I love you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Here is what we know. Amren said the Lashon HaKodesh is no language of this world. The Daglin/Asteri created this language, which we learn from Rigelis in chapter 96 of A House of Flame and Shadow. This was created from their home world. So Amren says that it's not of the Prithian world, and Rigelis says it's of their home world. So we can assume that this is the Tog world of Aurelia, which is the Asteri's home world. Which I thought
it is?
I thought it was Prithian. So I was like, wait, what? That's only if...
I didn't think it was Prithian either. I thought they had a whole other world of their own, and then they went and infiltrated these other two worlds.
So it could be. It's not confirmed that it's from Aurelia. I assumed that because we're working with 3 different worlds here. If it's not from the first 2, then it would be from the third one. But it could be from a totally different one. Maybe the main point of Twilight of the Gods. We have no idea. We also know from the Underking in CC3 that when Ethan is talking to him about the Shifter world, which his line of Fae hailed from, quote, this is, oh my God, this gave me chills, quote, the cauldron of life, brimming with the language of creation, Erd, they call her here, the bastardization version of her true name. Word, we called her in that old world. So Word equals Erd equals Cauldron / the mother, which I didn't know until this episode of the deep dive, which I'm a little ashamed to say because that's like a huge Maasverse moment. So these are obviously two different languages, like I mentioned earlier. And if the mother Erd word created word marks, which based on the name alone, word marks from word, that makes sense. Which would mean that the Book of Breathings is not in word marks because the Daglin / Asteri created the language that the Book of Breathings is written in. So because of that, I'm inclined to think that the swirls and whirls on the doors that Amren activates with heat press magic, basically, that is word marks in here in our ACOTAR world. Also, they're described as swirls and whirls, which is how Selena describes them in the first talk book. But while we're on this whole Book of Breathing situation, and I hope you're still with me, this is not the only series that the Book of Breathings is mentioned in. In Crescent City 1, right before Micah does his big old evil villain monologue and then gets vacuumed up by Bryce. Amazing. Bryce's inner monologue says, quote, Micah loomed over her. She stretched her arm out towards the shelf. Her tingling fingers brushed over the titles. On the Divine Number, The Walking Dead, The Book of Breathings, The Queen of Many Faces, ... How did the Book of Breathings end up in Jessica's library in Crescent City 1? We will discuss that at a later date because, yes, we have some theories. But also, side note, yes, The Walking Dead is from Throne of Glass, also in Jessica's library. Wow.
Whew. All right, friends. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode in the Summer Court. That was a really fun one there, especially after the beast that was episode 5. Next episode, we are covering chapters 38 through 43. As Nicole mentioned, is the throne scene. So get ready and definitely do not let your children listen to it.
Thank you, as always, to our executive producer, Hayden, aka our sanity manager. We love you. This is also his first episode that he is editing. We're so sorry, Hayden. We're both sick and dying. Thank you, Hayden. We love you.
Be sure to join the Patreon party at patreon.com/Fantasy Fangirls.
Also, be sure to sign up for our newsletter. We just sent out our May one, which had all sorts of goodies in it, but we will be sending out our June one towards the end of the month. So be sure to get on that list. Link in the show notes.
And if you're not following us on Instagram and TikTok, what are you doing? Give us a follow at Fantasy Fangirls Pod.
Also, do not forget to rate and review this podcast. It is the best thing that you can do for any and all podcasts that you listen to. And like I said earlier, it takes 5 seconds. But the most primo thing that you can do for this podcast is share it with your fellow ACOMAF friends. If you've been wanting a summer vacation, you know what? This is the next best thing, and you can share it with your buddies. So go ahead and hit that share button.
Thank you so much. We love you. We'll see you next week.
Themes, theories, and more. Whoa. Let me do that again. I'm sorry, my voice cracked. So head over to our Patreon. Blah, blah, blah. So head over for our sorry, Hayden. Later in Favor's bedroom. Not Tamlin, that was what we said. Let's get a sip of tea. Hold on. I apologize in advance, Hayden. This is going to be a bitch to edit. I'm so sorry. Reese flies Feyre and Amren close to the entrance when low tide.
Oh, dear.
Okay. Oh, hello.
Speaking of wardrobe malfunctions, your shirt's broken.
I don't know what to tell you right now.
Nope, we're just going to go with it here.
The show must go on.
The show must go on.
I'll say something.
I'm so sorry, Hayden. I
feel like the bloopers are all just going to be us being like, I'm sorry, Hayden. I'm sorry, Hayden.